2 worlds I studied at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 26 Moon Slingshot. On Thursday, with everyone's anxious anticipation, the flying class finally arrived. At the breakfast table, Neville specially chose a seat next to Hermione, in order to remember the flying knowledge in the book. Although Hermione had read the Magic Quidditch 5 times, unfortunately Neville did not remember a single flying rule. Fortunately, the arrival of the owl in the morning solved some of Neville's memory problems. He received a transparent magic memory ball. It is said that as long as you hold this magical glass ball, it can find out if the holder has forgotten something. However, Neville was not happy for more than 3 seconds after taking the memory ball, because the transparent glass ball in his hand turned red. What should I do? What did I forget? Just as Neville was seeking help from the people around him, Malfoy suddenly jumped out from behind him and snatched the memory ball. Seeing Malfoy's smug smile, Harry and Ron stood up immediately. These two said in the dormitory every day that they were eager to fight with Malfoy, and now they would not let go of the opportunity. Moon also stared at Malfoy closely, and his hand put down the spoon and slowly reached into his pocket. The imagined conflict did not come, because Professor McGonagall, who was good at finding problems, came over in time. Malfoy could only throw the memory ball back to the dining table and quickly escaped from the hall. In the morning, there was another transfiguration class. This week, Professor McGonagall explained how to turn a needle back into a match. This spell was more difficult than last week. Ron, who was sitting in the back, had already blown away 2 silver needles, one of which was Harry's. When Neville cast this spell, the needle accidentally flew out and broke the chandelier on the ceiling. Professor McGonagall had to cast a restore to the original to return the broken chandelier to the ceiling. Moon finally got a match after trying twice, while Hermione still completed it in one go. In the afternoon spell class, Professor Flitwick explained a new spell. A latch opening. This was also the second spell that Moon mastered, the unlocking spell. Perhaps because of the flying class, Hermione had to learn this spell twice before she successfully opened the lock on the desk. The weather was very good in the afternoon, with only a few lazy white clouds floating in the blue sky. Today is a very suitable day for flying. These are the original words of Ms. Hooch, Moon's flying teacher. Okay, hold on tight, everyone stand next to a broom. Ms. Hooch's words were firm and powerful, but this could not stop the trembling hearts of the little wizards. The brooms in the school are so broken, Ron muttered. Moon agreed very much. The broom he was assigned was broken and old, and he could even see that the broom tail had several broken ends. Stretch out your right hand, put it above the broom, and say, "Get up." The first point taught by Ms. Hooch is to communicate with a broom, and the way to communicate is to shout at the broom. Get up, get up, get up, get up. Different voices came from the grass. Moon thought Hermione would be the first, but this time he guessed wrong. Harry's broom only shouted once, and then obediently jumped into his hand. Moon shouted twice and achieved the same effect. The same thing happened to Malfoy on the opposite side. When the little Slytherin got the broom in his hand, he looked at Neville with disdain. Neville's broom had not moved from beginning to end, and his throat was trembling with fear. Hermione was a little better. After her broom rolled on the ground for 5 or 6 times, it finally jumped into her hand. Okay, now everyone grab the broom in your hands. Neville bent down and picked up the broom. Okay, next you must hold the broom firmly, and when the whistle blows, you must kick your legs. Before Madame Hooch finished explaining the rules, Neville's nervous legs had already exerted force. Before Moon could grab the corner of his clothes, he had already flown up. Come back, kid, words cannot catch up with a little wizard who has taken off. The consequences of flying without permission are also very serious. Neville's wrist was broken. When Madame Hooch sent him to the hospital, she asked everyone to put down their brooms and not move, otherwise they would be expelled. Moon immediately put the broom on the ground, and he was also afraid that he would not be able to help but kick his legs. Hermione had been reciting the flying rules every day this week, and Moon had memorized them all. Now all that was left was to practice. Just as Moon was recalling the key points of flying in his mind, the Slytherin students and the Gryffindor students in the team started arguing. Malfoy was showing off a small glowing ball in his hand. It was Neville's memory ball, which he had just dropped. Come and get it, Potter, Malfoy said, and immediately flew up on his broom. Harry followed closely behind. Moon did not grab the broom, but picked up a stone on the grass. When everyone was paying attention to the two people flying in the sky, Moon had already taken out his slingshot and aimed at Malfoy's broom head. Bang! After the broom head was hit, Malfoy was so scared that he quickly held the broom with both hands and tried to maintain his balance. The memory ball had already been thrown down by him. Too high. Seeing the memory ball fall, Moon put away the slingshot and ran to the middle of the field. Although they were on the grass, Malfoy had already flown as high as the 5-story castle. If the memory ball fell, it would surely shatter. But what Moon did not expect was that Harry actually flew down quickly in the air, and just when the memory ball was about to land, he actually caught it steadily. At that time, Harry was only as high as a wand from the ground. Harry, who was holding the memory ball, had no time to be happy, and Professor McGonagall called him away angrily. Moon kept staring at the direction where Harry left, and he found that the wizard bar of this gentle little boy had just increased a lot. 1/4 of a grid. Is flying Harry's specialty? Moon returned to the team after watching Professor McGonagall lead Harry into the castle. Who is it? Who is hitting me? Malfoy looked at the people around him angrily. Just now, he had to work hard to stabilize the broom in midair. If it weren't for his good flying skills, he would probably have been sent to the school infirmary like Neville. No one hit you. Could it be a bird? Bird? How could I not see the bird? Goyle. Someone hit me, and they used stones. No one around admitted it, and Malfoy finally couldn't find anyone and had to give up. But Hermione was very sharp and noticed the last person in the team. Moon sat with everyone as if nothing had happened, discussing the battle in the air that had just happened. Do you think Harry will be expelled? Ron came over and asked carefully. I shouldn't. Harry is helping Neville. Seamus agreed. It's okay. If Harry is expelled, we will explain the situation to the professor. It was Malfoy who flew up with a broom first. The speaker was Parvati Patil, a very courageous Gryffindor girl, but she didn't seem to have a good relationship with Hermione, because they didn't say a few words. Yes, if Harry is expelled, we will go to Professor McGonagall together to explain the situation. With the assurances of a group of little lions, the first flying class ended so hastily. I'm asking for the follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets in the hands of the little wizard. Chapter 27, Bengbeng's New Friend. At dinner time, Harry, who made everyone worried, came back without any punishment. Although no one knew what this gentle little wizard had experienced, every freshman congratulated him. Moon, you threw that stone, didn't you? After Harry happily responded to the congratulations of others, he sat down at the dining table and stared at Moon. Hermione, who was reading a book and eating at the opposite side of the table, also turned her head. She thought she was the only one who knew that it was Moon who did it. What stone? Harry, Ron also came over curiously. It's the stone that hit Malfoy's broom. If Moon hadn't hid him, I would have planned to hide him, so it was you who did it. I said Malfoy had been looking for it for a long time, but couldn't find who it was. Haha. Great. Ron's voice became louder and louder, but Harry covered his mouth directly. Malfoy at the next table had already looked over. It seemed that he found that Harry was not expelled, and his eyes were very unfriendly. Ron also glanced at the frustrated Malfoy, nodded happily, and then Harry took his hand away. Moon, your slingshot is so accurate. Malfoy must have been 50 feet tall at that time, and you actually hit his broom head, Ron asked Moon happily after taking a bite of pie. That's nothing. Moon used a slingshot to teach Dudley, my cousin, a lesson at the zoo. The distance at that time was much farther than today. What Harry said happened before school started. At that time, Moon just couldn't stand the fat boy bullying his own kind, so he hit Harry's cousin's hand with the wood-carving waste. If this is true, then Moon, you can definitely become a chaser for the Quidditch team. Although Moon had listened to Hermione's nagging about magical Quidditch for a week, he didn't understand what a chaser should do. Because Hermione was only concerned about the flying rules, and didn't say anything about the rules of the game. But when Ron talked about the Quidditch team, Harry's expression became excited. Under the curious questioning of the three, Harry said that he had become a seeker for the Gryffindor team. One of you is a first-year seeker, and the other is going to join Professor Sprout's club. How can I live like this? Ron said, feeling depressed. Ever since he saw the influence of Harry's fame at the beginning of the school year, he has been very concerned about these things. Especially now that he finds that the people around him are becoming more and more powerful, he is even more depressed. Moon had finished eating at this time. He came over and patted Ron on the shoulder. "Hogwarts Wizard Chess King, take your time eating, I'm leaving first." Hearing Moon's joking explanation, Ron's mood suddenly improved. He realized that he actually had advantages. "Okay, future chaser, go and see your sapling," Ron shouted happily to Moon, who was about to leave the hall. But as soon as he finished speaking, Malfoy's laughter came from not far away. "Chess King, chaser, you can't do it." Moon would move the sapling to the balcony every morning and move it back to the dormitory in the evening. Before Neville was injured, he would help Moon move the trees, but now only Bumble was beside him, cheering him on. During the day, Bumble would be responsible for taking care of the 3 saplings to prevent other students' pets from destroying them. Although Bumble is not big, it has its own honorary title in Gryffindor Tower. The 6-time champion. And Moon was also honored to be the friend of the 6-time champion. After moving the 3 pots of saplings to the dormitory, Harry and Ron also returned to the common room. Moon found that both of them looked bad, and Hermione was also a little bit wrong. When she was reading, she always looked in the direction of Harry and Ron. Seeing that the 3 did not say what happened, Moon also quietly read the books borrowed from the library. Wand making and maintenance has been finished, and Moon is ready to start exploring more magic books. As for which ones to read, he does not need to bother to think about it, because Hermione will give a reasonable list of books. When most of the students returned to the dormitory, Moon took Bumble to the bathroom. "I don't know what happened to this little guy, but he always smells fishy these past 2 days." Bengbeng was playing with bubbles in the bathroom, explaining to Moon that he smelled because he was preparing gifts for his new friends. "It's a good thing to make new friends." Of course I won't be angry. As long as Bengbeng is happy in Hogwarts, we can take a bath every day." After drying Bengbeng's body with a towel, Moon carried him back to the dormitory. The next morning, Moon got up at 6 o'clock to read as usual. When he finished reading Oxford Reading Tree, his roommates came out one after another. "Did you not sleep well last night?" Moon found that Harry, Ron, and Neville all had dark circles under their eyes, which made him wonder if something happened last night. "No, we went last night." Ron was about to say something when Hermione came out of the girls' dormitory. "Ron, your voice is too loud. Others will hear it." Hermione also had 2 dark circles under her eyes and her tone was very unfriendly. Ron wanted to refute, but thinking that Hermione might have guessed what happened last night, he shut up. "What's the matter? There are 2 potions classes this morning. Aren't you afraid of being punished by Snape?" Hearing that there were 2 potions classes, Harry and Ron wailed, and Neville was already stunned. The experience of last week's potions class was still vivid in his mind, and Neville was now very afraid of Snape. "How about we be in the same group today, Neville? I just happened to have reviewed the content." Moon looked at Neville with wet eyes, walked over and patted him on the shoulder. "But I don't know anything. Don't worry, you just need to take notes, and leave the rest to me." Several people talked and came to the hall. On the way, Harry quietly told Moon what happened last night. Several of them actually went to an appointment in the middle of the night, an appointment to duel with Malfoy. Damn, Malfoy, that coward, actually broke the appointment. Ron was a little angry when he thought about it now. "I told you a long time ago that Malfoy lied to you. He had no intention of going there to duel with you." Hermione spoke in a very stern tone, probably because she felt that she was also implicated as a bad student who violated school rules. "Well, at least we know what is hidden under the trapdoor." Ever since Harry learned about the news of the theft at Gringotts, he has been paying attention to the small package taken away by Hagrid. Last night when they were hiding from Filch, they found a trapdoor guarded by 3 big dogs in a dark room. Harry thought that what was hidden underneath might be what Hagrid took away. However, it seemed that only he and Ron were concerned about this matter. Hermione was still angry that she had become a student who violated the rules. Neville was worried about the upcoming potions class. As for Moon, he just wanted to study magic well in order to prepare for the war that would break out in Xilin. Seeing that his friends didn't pay much attention to this matter, Harry became a little disappointed. But when he received a mysterious package for breakfast, he also forgot about the things hidden under the trapdoor. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 28 Rewards for Surviving Saplings. An owl delivered a large package to Harry. From the contents of the package, Harry learned that this was the latest model of flying broomstick given to him by Professor McGonagall. Nimbus 2000. It was the arrival of this surprise gift that offset Harry's fear of potions class, and even Ron excitedly talked about going back to open the package together after class. But not everyone has such good luck as Harry. From the moment Neville walked into the potions classroom, his whole body was shaking uncontrollably. Don't worry, Neville, today we are learning potions to treat burns, and the steps are similar to last week. Hermione originally wanted to encourage Neville, but her words successfully evoked Neville's tragic memory last week, which made him more nervous. It's okay, Neville, you will only be responsible for recording in a while, and I will do all the operations. Hearing Moon's words, Neville turned his head and showed an ugly smile. Professor Snape was as cold and ruthless as ever. This was a sentence Ron muttered in class, and he was deducted a point for this. Before the potion was brewed, Harry was asked 3 questions as usual. Perhaps because of the flying broom, even though Harry had prepared in advance, he still stumbled in answering. Harry Potter, fame is not everything. You'd better remember all this knowledge instead of just knowing it halfway, otherwise you will hurt many people. Snape's tone of reprimanding Harry was very harsh, which made Neville, who was sitting behind him, swallow his saliva unconsciously. Moon found something strange. He sat with Neville and happened to be able to find that Snape had been looking into Harry's eyes. Even though his tone was very harsh, the look in Harry's eyes was a bit complicated. This was a look that Moon could not understand. After asking Harry questions, Snape looked at Moon, who was sitting next to Neville, strangely, and then returned to the podium to announce the start of potion making. The magic potion for treating burns requires white mulberry bark, evening primrose, bat teeth, toad clothes and a small amount of unicorn tears. First clean the crucible, then add the diced white mulberry peel, heat it over low heat, and slowly stir the white mulberry peel until a light green juice oozes out. Moon's every step is very standard. When he operates the next step, he will dictate it, and Neville standing next to him is responsible for recording. Just when Moon was sighing that there would be no potion accident today, Snape came over. Mr. Neville Longbottom, Snape's cold and high-pitched voice suddenly sounded, causing Neville, who was still concentrating on recording, to throw away a notebook in his hand. Moon quickly caught a notebook that was about to fall into the crucible, and his other hand was still stirring. Why don't you do it yourself? Or do you think you can learn potions just by recording? After Snape finished speaking, he turned his head and looked at Moon. And you, Moon Scarlett, do you think you are helping him? This is not Moon's fault, it's me. Moon was about to explain, but Neville stopped the responsibility with a trembling voice. It's you, okay. Then Mr. Longbottom, are you really not planning to do it yourself in this class? Under Snape's fierce gaze, Neville took the knife for cutting the white peony. I'm very sorry, what should I do now? Neville looked at Moon with a trembling voice. It doesn't matter. You just need to crush the bat teeth now, remember the finer the better. Moon had already added the evening primrose to the crucible, and the emerald green evening primrose oil precipitated from it was slowly blending with the white peony juice. Watching Neville tremblingly crush the bat teeth, Moon turned off the fire first, then added the tooth powder, and then Neville was allowed to stir the crucible. Next, before the liquid medicine is completely cooled, add the crushed toad skin, and Moon chose to do this step by himself. After adding the crushed toad skin, adjust the flame to the maximum accordingly, and when the stirring rod can stand completely in the thick liquid medicine, immediately add 3 drops of unicorn tears and turn off the fire. At this point, the potion was successfully brewed. When Snape came to check after class, he left without saying anything. On the way to the cafeteria, Neville had recovered from his panic and smiled. This is a potions class, and I'm not injured. It was a great achievement for Neville to finish Professor Snape's potions class smoothly. People around him also congratulated him, which made Neville more confident. Moon also found that Neville's change was not about confidence and courage, but the wizard bar above his head. Since the end of the potions class, Neville's wizard bar has increased from blank to a quarter of a square. This is as long as Harry's wizard bar. It is rare for a wizard bar to change suddenly like this. Most wizard bars are growing slowly, and it is difficult to detect changes at ordinary times. Therefore, if you want to know the speed of other students' wizard bars, you need to compare them after a period of time. At lunchtime, Moon sat at the Gryffindor table and observed all the first-year students. Needless to say, Hermione's wizard bar is one of the slowest growing ones, but she is still the longest, already 3/4 of a bar. As for the people in the second echelon last week, Malfoy, Michael Corner, and Susan Bones, their wizard bars are close to half of a bar. As for Moon himself, he looked at the reflection of the golden plate on the dining table. 1/3, Moon was very satisfied with his progress. There were 4 or 5 classmates with the same length as him, but there were only those 4 people ahead of him, so they became Moon's next target. As for his roommates, except Ron, everyone had 1/4 of a bar. Seeing Ron still happily eating barbecue, Moon didn't know whether he should worry about him. On Friday afternoon, Moon brought 3 pots of saplings to the greenhouse. Today is exactly 1 week after the saplings were planted, and none of them died. Among them, the best growing one is the slender willow branch, which not only grew 3 leaves, but also grew an inch taller. The grapevines have also adapted to the new environment and sprouted. The least noticeable one is the holly tree. It has stayed in the pot for a week without any changes. The fact that it has not withered means that it is alive and well. The holly tree will take root in the ground first, so we can't see much change now. Professor Sprout observed the 3 pots of plants and nodded with satisfaction. It is difficult for other young wizards to have the patience to cultivate plants. Even if they do, the cultivated plants will hardly survive for more than 3 days. I have to say that you are indeed very talented in herbal plants. Moon didn't know if he really had the talent that Professor Sprout said. He only knew that most of these things were mastered by him after 3 years at the farm. Well, I said that as long as you can grow one of these saplings, I will give you a reward. Now that all 3 are alive, it seems that I can't hide it anymore, Professor Sprout said, and took out a medicine bottle filled with emerald green liquid from the wooden box behind him. Ask for the follow-up reading, monthly ticket, and recommendation ticket in the hands of the little wizard. Chapter 29 Requirements for joining the club. After arriving at Hogwarts, Moon realized that magic is not the most magical, but only more magical. Professor Sprout gently poured a drop of the potion in his hand into the pot of the holly tree, and saw that the sapling, which was originally bare, instantly became full of vitality and sprouted. In Moon's surprised eyes, the small sprouts were slowly growing bigger, sprouting branches, and the branches were also slowly growing. This is a plant growth potion, a very difficult intermediate potion to refine, Professor Sprout said, and then he put the lid on and handed the potion bottle over. At this moment, Moon finally understood Harry's feelings when he received the Nimbus 2000. No wonder the gentle boy kept nagging about his flying broom all day, and even didn't care about the punishment in the potion class. But compared to the Nimbus 2000, Moon felt that the potion was more practical. In order to ensure that these saplings can fully absorb the energy of the potion, each plant can only be given a maximum of 1 drop per day, Professor Sprout said, and motioned Moon to apply the potion to the remaining 2 plants. Gently tilting the potion bottle, until a drop of emerald green thick potion reluctantly left the mouth of the bottle, Moon immediately took back the small bottle. Looking at the willow branches in the flower pot growing new branches, Professor Sprout nodded with satisfaction. Yes, although there are only 15 drops of potion in it, it can already support them to become a big tree with 5 annual rings. Wait, Professor, are you saying that this drop of potion can make the sapling become a big tree of 1 year? Moon looked at the potion bottle in his hand in disbelief, and then turned to Professor Sprout for confirmation. Yes, this is thanks to our school has a very good potion master, otherwise the plant growth potion would not have achieved such a good effect. Are you talking about Professor Snape? Of course, he was very talented in potions when he was in school, but I didn't expect his level to be even higher now. Moon couldn't understand Professor Sprout's praise for Snape. He just felt that the potion professor was very difficult to communicate with, especially for Gryffindor students. After Moon finished applying the potion to all the saplings, Sprout nodded with satisfaction. Mr. Scarlett, I think Cedric has already told you about the Slumber Cactus Club. Yes, Professor, actually, I formed this club to allow young people with talent in herbal plant magic to communicate with each other, Sprout said and suddenly turned around and looked over. By the way, I haven't asked you if you are interested in joining this club. Of course. Professor, Moon now has no reason to refuse. Not only because Professor Sprout rewarded him with a potion that far exceeded his expectations, but more importantly, Moon knew that as long as he joined, he would learn more magic knowledge. Okay, since you are willing, then I will continue. In fact, there are requirements for joining the Slumber Cactus Club. As the most authoritative small group in Hogwarts in herbal plant magic, the Sklumber Cactus Club requires that members must be able to master the characteristics of a herbal plant and make reasonable use of it. Normally, students who can meet this requirement are at least third-year students. It is rare to see a young wizard like Moon who shows talent in the first year. So Sprout is willing to provide additional support. In fact, after 3 days of persistence, Sprout was able to confirm that all the 3 saplings collected by Moon would survive. Her plant potion only shortened the growth cycle of the saplings. As for how to use the characteristics of plants to facilitate magic, this requires Moon to do it herself. This is also the proof of whether Moon can join the Cryococulata Club. Okay, Mr. Scarlett, it's up to you next. Sprout put on the dragon leather gloves after she finished speaking. She would go to the herb field to transplant some herbal plants that the young wizards would use in class next week. Before leaving, she took another look at the saplings that were still growing. Remember not to give them potions frequently. Now it's their limit. Also, remember to move them outside the greenhouse, otherwise the ceiling here will be in trouble. Okay, Professor, Moon agreed and immediately began to move the flower pots outside. Now, many of the 3 saplings have sprouted, and the best growing one is the willow tree, which is taller than Moon's head. After moving all the flower pots out, Moon found a shovel and started digging holes. He knew that the 1-year-old saplings would not stay in the pots honestly, and they had to be given a spacious dormitory. There were 2 rows of beautiful and sturdy trees outside the greenhouse, which should have been planted a long time ago. The most common tree species was small-leaved linden, which had beautiful leaves and flowers. Moon chose the location of the sapling dormitory next to the small-leaved linden. While he was digging the hole, the saplings in the pots were still growing, as if urging him to go faster. Moon had to speed up, and at this time, a person suddenly came from the Quidditch field. I was training just now, and I saw you digging a hole, so I thought you might need help. The speaker was Cedric. Today was the day for the Hufflepuff team to train, and he just saw Moon's figure in the air. Cedric said and took another shovel to join the digging team. Thank you very much. No need to thank me. I think you will be a member of our club sooner or later. With Cedric's participation, 3 pits less than 2 feet deep were dug quickly. After putting the sapling in and backfiling the soil, Cedric left, and Moon was also preparing to go to Hagrid before the sun went down. Last time when collecting saplings, Hagrid helped to prepare a lot of things, and Moon always remembered it in his heart. Now that he has obtained such a magical potion, he feels it is necessary to share this joy. Returning to the dormitory to take Bengbeng, and then taking the small wooden sculpture that he carved this week, Moon came to the door of the wooden house again. This is the wooden Yale you carved. The wooden sculpture was originally the size of a palm in Moon's hand, but in Hagrid's hand it was only the size of his 3 fingers. Yes, this is my thank you, Moon said and put Bengbeng on the top of Yale's head. The last time they became good friends. Wow, I didn't expect you to have this skill. Look. Yeah, this is exactly the same as when you were a kid. Yale is obviously not very interested in the wood carving. It just glanced at it and continued to play with Bengbeng. Well, it seems that friends are more important to it, Hagrid said, putting the small wood carving on the chest of drawers beside his bed, and patted the wooden carving dog's head. Moon, would you like a portion of Hagrid's shortbread? I have improved the secret recipe. You will definitely like it. It has to be said that Hagrid's creativity in the field of cooking is very bold. After adding rock-skin biscuits to the tea soup, he actually added a handful of salted fish. How about it? This is the fish I caught in the Black Lake last year, and it was dried in the sun for a whole year with salt. Moon only tasted it and put down the spoon with a frown. Chapter 30 Discovering the Secrets of Trees. Moon finally suggested that Hagrid replace the salted fish with milk and crispy candy. This delicacy composed of milk, tea, sugar, dried fruit and soaked naan dominated the table of Xilin Harvest Festival. The latest Hagrid shortbread is just a rock cake instead of naan. Just one bite, Hagrid fell in love with the taste. This is so delicious, Hagrid praised the food in his hand and turned to look at Moon. Snape, of course it's him, even Dumbledore trusts him very much. While enjoying the final version of Hagrid's shortbread, Moon shared his experience of getting the potion reward. To his surprise, Hagrid also praised Snape. Well, tell me about your saplings. I think they have changed a lot now. When I came, they were still growing wildly, and the tallest one was more than 5 feet tall. Crunch. Moon took a bite of the dried fruit mixed with milk, and a crunching sound came out of his mouth. 5 feet a day, 2 days to grow. It looks like it will be an adult tomorrow or the day after tomorrow." Hagrid put down the big spoon, bent the fingers of his left hand and thought for a long time, then leaned slightly closer to Moon. Gulp. "I think I need to tell you a secret." Swallowing the food in his mouth, Hagrid's expression became serious. "Ollivander always comes to the Forbidden Forest to collect wood at night." After enjoying a large afternoon tea, Moon and Bounce left the cabin. On the way back, they took a detour to the greenhouse to see how the saplings were growing. The holly tree was obviously a player with sufficient stamina. It was now larger than the first two and was a full 6 feet. "Chi, yes, come here to guard at night." After Hagrid said that Ollivander would collect wood that could be used to make wands at night, Moon decided to follow suit. This family has more than 2,000 years of experience in wand making, and there must be a reason for choosing to work at night. It just so happened that today was Friday, and the control in the castle would not be as strict as usual in the next few days. Filch also needed to enjoy his weekend, so Moon planned to sneak out at night. Fortunately, Moon had experience living alone. At night, while everyone was playing in the common room, he packed all his belongings and went to the greenhouse. When he just walked to the door of the greenhouse, he found that the greenhouse where the first graders usually had classes was not locked. Did Professor Sprout forget it? Moon pushed the door open and walked into the greenhouse. All the plants here had been cleared, and there was a small burning stove in the middle of the greenhouse. Bengbeng jumped out of Moon's pocket and jumped to the edge of the stove to enjoy the warmth. Looking at the stove that should not be in the greenhouse, Moon also smiled and sat on the side, but his eyes were always fixed on the 3 saplings outside. On Saturday morning, Moon had just fallen asleep in a chair. Cedric suddenly came at this time and he gently pushed Moon. "Wake up, go back to sleep, I'll guard here during the day." After watching the saplings all night, Moon's head was now dizzy. He thanked Cedric vaguely, stuffed the sling back into his pocket, and walked towards the dormitory in a daze. After seeing Moon leave, Cedric took the stove that was about to go out outside. On Saturday afternoon, 3 drops of magic potion were dripped on the 3 saplings that had grown into big trees, and then Moon waited all night again. The same thing happened on Sunday afternoon. At this time, the tallest holly tree was more than 20 feet tall, and the vines had covered the entire glass wall of the greenhouse. As for the willow tree with the most vigorous vitality, its crown had expanded to 5 or 6 meters, and birds began to build nests on it. Moon looked up in the library that plants would show their magical properties when they matured. Now that the 3 plants have grown up, tonight has become the time he needs to observe carefully. Worried about missing the magical changes of the 3 plants, Moon went to the Forbidden Forest to invite a tree protector in the afternoon. The green magical animal was slightly stunned when it saw the 3 big trees. The Botricle could feel that the smell of the 3 big trees was exactly the same as the ones they were guarding. However, the saplings had grown so big and had not been discovered by their own kind, which surprised it a little. The Botricle jumped from Moon's arms to the willow tree. After choosing a comfortable place, it crawled on it and did not move. "It's really magical, isn't it?" Cedric came when Moon returned to the greenhouse as if he had received instructions. That's right, Moon had seen the ability of the Botricle. Now that this little animal was willing to stay on the willow tree, it meant that the big tree was likely to awaken magical properties. "Actually, after I graduate, I want to work in the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures of the Ministry of Magic. My father is there. When I was a child, he would tell me a lot about magical animals every day." As Moon and Cedric chatted, the night slowly fell, and a bright moon like a silver plate slowly climbed to the center of the sky. Not sure if it was an illusion, Moon found that the willow branches that were originally still began to flutter without wind when the moon rose to the highest point. At the same time, the Botricle also made a long call. Squeak. In this slightly harsh call, the willow branches fluttered more violently, and even those flying willow branches occasionally threw out green fluorescent spots. Squeak. The sound of the Botricle became louder. When it finished its third call, the fluorescent light that had been floating outward began to slowly return to the willow tree, and then all gathered at the place where it was crawling. Seeing this magical scene, Moon and Cedric hurried over. "I saw that the fluorescent light slowly penetrated into the bark after approaching the willow tree, and then disappeared without a trace." "Where did they go?" Cedric asked. Moon had already taken out the earthworm and the knife and stretched them towards the tree trunk. Maybe it was too involved just now, and the Botricle subconsciously wanted to attack when he saw Moon's hand reaching out. However, After seeing that it was food, it immediately retracted its sharp front claws and lightly jumped into Moon's hand to enjoy the delicious food. The knife had already lightly scratched the willow tree, and a layer of green light film appeared under the originally hard bark. Both pairs of eyes looked at the gap, and Moon found that the light film was still slowly penetrating downwards, until it finally completely penetrated into the trunk. They're all hidden. What should I do? After the fluorescence penetrated into the trunk, the whole willow tree had no strange features. And it was exactly the same as an ordinary willow tree. It doesn't matter, I found them. Moon smiled and pushed aside a layer of bark, scraped off a little trunk tissue with a knife, and then looked at it in the moonlight. The fluorescence that had disappeared originally showed its original form under the moonlight, but now they have all merged with a tree. So that's how it is. The Botricle left these magical powers in the big tree, so that's why the wood can be used to make magic wands. Moon agreed with Cedric's statement. After tonight's experience, he finally knew how to find the magical trees that can be used to make magic wands. But the changes tonight did not stop there. The Botricle, which had just eaten 2 earthworms, jumped from Moon to the grapevine. Seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 31, Bengbeng's new friend revealed. Before midnight, Moon witnessed the awakening of the magical tree again. The vine grows thinner than the willow, so the range of the magical fluorescence it produces is larger. Until the fluorescence is completely retracted, a 2-meter-long section becomes a spare wood for making wands. Seeing that the moon was already setting, Moon handed the Botricle to Cedric, explained it, and ran to the dormitory alone. Today is the day to return to Xilin, and Moon does not want others to know this secret. After witnessing the changes of the magical trees twice, Moon has mastered the method of finding magical trees. He thinks that the reason why wizards cannot find such magical trees is that the Botricle hides this energy, which makes the magical trees look no different from ordinary trees. Thinking about what he saw and heard tonight, Moon ran quickly to the lounge. However, when he turned a staircase, a small ball of mixed hair appeared. It was Mrs. Norris. As the right-hand man of the castle manager Filch, the name of this cat has been mentioned by Ron and Harry several times. In the dormitory, Moon often heard his roommates complain that the cat had a very sharp nose and could always accurately catch people in the corridor. Moon never thought that he would become a little wizard who violated the rules and was caught, especially tonight he couldn't be the one who was caught. Woo! After discovering Moon's trace, Mrs. Norris was also frightened and jumped up. Just as she was about to go back to call Filch over, a crisp cry came out. Bengbeng, who was sleeping in Moon's pocket, jumped out, and his 2 little eyes looked at Mrs. Norris in surprise. The mixed-haired cat stopped suddenly, and it turned its head and looked at Sniff, who jumped out of the little wizard's pocket in surprise. Bengbeng's action was completely unexpected by Moon. It actually ran to Mrs. Norris and patted the cat's head. And the mixed-haired cat also made a soft cat cry. Meow. This scene surprised Moon. Just as he was about to ask Bengbeng what was going on, Filch's voice suddenly came from the stairs below. Oh, dear, have you found the wandering little wizard again? Don't worry, I'll be there soon. A swaying light came from the dim corridor. It was from the oil lamp in Filch's hand. Hearing the footsteps getting closer, Moon picked up Beng and ran to another staircase. Tell me quickly, dear, where's the little wizard hiding? Filch's hoarse voice sounded where Moon had just stood, but then the footsteps gradually faded away. Moon didn't walk down the stairs until the footsteps disappeared, and then ran quickly towards the Gryffindor common room. Is Mrs. Norris your new friend? After returning to the common room, Moon lowered his head and asked Bong. The lazy little guy stretched and answered with a chirp. Okay, let's go back to bed first. Bong had been accompanying Moon for the past 3 nights, and the little guy was now exhausted. Moon tiptoed back to the dormitory, put Bong back in the tree nest cabin, and lay down quietly on the bed. After returning to Xilin, Moon first had a good sleep, and then got up to find Uncle Neil. When he said goodbye to Neil last time, he said that he would ask the forest merchant and let Moon go to learn how to cultivate fruit seedlings. Because of the war, all forests have become controlled items. Charcoal is needed to make gunpowder, and trees must be cut down to make charcoal. Even if some small seedlings have not grown yet, they must contribute to the war. Because he has been working with Neil for 7 years, this forest merchant named Merrick readily agreed to Moon's request to visit the forest farm. The forest farm is located in the north of Xilin town. After riding a horse carriage for half a day, until you can see a continuous low hill, You will arrive at Merrick's forest farm. The 4 hills in front were planted in the past 10 years, and the ones behind were planted by my father, and they have been there for 30 years. As for the deeper ones, there are hundreds of years old trees, but we usually don't go there. Merrick, riding on a horse, introduced the private property belonging to their family very proudly. Moon nodded and smiled in response, but his eyes were always searching for the set target. There are so many trees in the forest farm, even far more than the species in the Forbidden Forest. After entertaining Moon at noon, Merrick found a forest farm guard. This is a middle-aged man named Xilin Knight. He is holding a big yellow dog in his hand, and there is an old-fashioned hunting rifle and bow and arrow on his back. The most notable feature is that he wears a black eye patch on his right eye. Are you Neil Scarlett's nephew? After entering the dense forest farm, Xilin looked at Moon beside him curiously. Yes, Uncle Neil arranged this visit to the forest farm. Oh, then you can tell me directly what you want to see. I entertained Neil last time. There is nothing in this forest farm that I don't know. Xilin took a sip of the strong liquor in the sheepskin bag and continued to lead the way, but Moon did not answer directly. Because he didn't know if he could find trees with magical properties now. Do you want to see everything? After walking for a long time, Xilin put down the sheepskin bag in his hand and stared at Moon seriously. Finding that Moon was serious and not joking, Xilin sighed helplessly, then walked to the front to lead the way. Well, fortunately there is a temporary supply point for lumberjacks on the mountain, otherwise we would have to go back to prepare food. Moon did not notice the change in Xalin's expression. He directly skipped the small trees that were not old enough and followed a forest ranger to go deeper. After entering the range of 30 years old, the big trees here have become lush and leafy, and the dense crowns cover the sky, making it difficult for light to come in. Even though it is daytime now, after entering here, Moon feels that the sun has not risen yet. Isn't there anything you are looking for here? The two who walked for a day and a night were now sitting on a flat hillside. A bonfire was lit in front of them, and a cooking rack was set on it. No, Moon answered the other party's question casually, and suddenly reacted and looked at the other party. How do you know I'm looking for something? Moon came to the forest farm this time in the name of observation and learning, and he did not tell anyone about his real purpose. Didn't Neil tell you that I was his soldier for 10 years? Your actions along the way can't fool my eyes at all. Xilin pointed to his only remaining left eye, then stuffed a piece of barbecue into his mouth and continued. You have been looking around all day, especially at night. You look at trees more diligently. Are you looking for some precious wood? Hearing the other party say this, Moon let out a deep breath. It seems that my disguise is not good enough. I am looking for wood, but not the precious wood you think. Hearing Moon's self-explosive answer, Xilin smiled and took a sip of wine, and also let out a deep breath. Disguise is not something you, an 11-year-old child, can master. Xilin just laughed at Moon's little thoughts. As for what he was looking for, he didn't ask more. Chapter 32, Magical things will always be protected. Moon didn't know how much Uncle Neil paid Xilin to make this fierce-looking forest ranger so dedicated. Even though he knew it was very dangerous to patrol the forest at night, the one-eyed strong man would light a torch and led the way. Okay, this is the place to observe the tallest trees over 100 years old in the forest farm. I hope you can find what you want. Xalin's hope did not come true. Moon sat on the big rock on the top of the mountain all night. His eyes were sore, but he still didn't find anything. The next day, the two continued to move deeper. They were now approaching the center of Black Iron Mountain. This place has long been out of the scope of the forest farm. Only some experienced hunters would enter such a deep forest. Looking around the dim environment, Moon found that the trees here no longer looked like those planted artificially in the forest farm. Every tree grew strangely willfully. As soon as Xilin entered here, he held the bow and arrow firmly in his hand. As for the matchlock hunting rifle, because its firing speed was not fast enough, it had become a secondary weapon. Moon also had a direct feeling at this time. The white air he exhaled told him that the temperature here was obviously colder than outside. Uncle Xilin, if we can't find us today, let's go out first. The Forbidden Forest of Hogwarts is very dangerous. This is what Moon was told when school started, but he didn't know what the Forbidden Forest was like. It was not until now that he stepped into the forest full of thousand-year-old trees that he truly felt the power of nature. Dim light, silence, ghost-like trees, and strange white fog that suddenly appeared. Okay, there happens to be a resting point for hunters nearby. We will go out after tonight. Moon agreed and strictly followed Xalin's instructions. No matter what he did, he would never act alone. Because the resting point was far away and the mountain road was difficult to walk, Moon and the others arrived at this narrow cave when it was dark. This cave can only accommodate 3 people at most, and there are some traces of fire in it. Xilin used his feet to dig the ashes, and his expression was slightly relaxed. 2 groups of people have been here in the past week. It seems that there will be no danger nearby for the time being. After hearing the analysis of the professionals, Moon also relaxed a little. After walking for 3 consecutive days, coupled with the tense environment today, Moon's nerves have been tense. We have to get some water first, otherwise it is likely that big guys will come out to look for food at midnight. Xilin was not at ease leaving Moon alone in the cave, so the 2 walked along the ridge to a small river valley. When they reached the ridge and the vision became wider, Moon found that there was actually a green fluorescence floating up from the other side of the river valley. What's wrong? Did you find what you were looking for? Xilin, who was leading the way, looked back in surprise at Moon who had not followed. Yes, it's on the other side of the river valley, Moon pointed excitedly. Xilin looked over, and he could only see a dark area on the opposite side. It's worth our 3 days of running. Let's go. Let's check the spot today. We'll get the stuff tomorrow and then we'll go out. Xilin already knew that the wood that Moon was looking for would only show its characteristics at night. So he wanted to check it out regardless of the danger. When they came to this valley along the river valley, they were dumbfounded. This valley was not too far from the rest point, but the entrance was hidden by lush weeds, so it became a small no-man's land. If Moon hadn't seen the magical fluorescence drifting out, they wouldn't have come to this place. It seems that what you are looking for is really a treasure. Xilin and Moon lay in the grass in the distance, looking at a mountain pear tree not far ahead. Moon showed a surprised expression at this time. He thought he was just checking the spot this time, but when they got closer, they found that there was actually a big snake guarding this wild fruit tree. Looking at the big snake that should have hibernated in the cold season coiled on the mountain pear tree, Moon thought of the tree guarding Botricle in Hogwarts. Could this big snake also be a magical animal? Moon was still thinking, when suddenly Xilin pulled him up and ran wildly in the direction they came from. This snake is not right. It can hear us talking from such a distance. As a person who travels through the mountains and forests all year round, Xilin's running speed is not slow, and Moon is also very fast because he often chases small animals in the hazelnut forest. But even so, they are still no match for the more than 10-meter-long snake. There was a sound of a giant creature passing through the weeds behind them. When they came to the river valley, Moon was about to cross the river, but Xilin grabbed him. The other side is uphill, and it is faster than us in the water. We can only run upstream. There is a narrow crack there, and the big snake can't get in. Moon was very obedient and followed Xilin upstream without any hesitation. Sure enough, after running for a distance, Moon saw the narrow crack that Xilin mentioned. This is a narrow valley that can only be entered sideways, and the river just flows through it. It was very easy for Moon to get into the crack, but it took Xilin a lot of effort. Even though he threw away a lot of unused things, he only got 2 meters deep before he got stuck. But that was enough. The big snake outside could only reach in with its tongue to touch his face. Oh, damn. What did this beast eat that smells so bad? Xilin didn't enjoy the face washing service for too long. After the big snake found that it couldn't reach the 2 of them, it disappeared outside the crack. The animals in the deep mountains are very smart, especially snakes, so we'd better stay here for one night and go out during the day. Moon approved of Xilin's approach. He knew that some animals would also ambush and hunt, and they were now unfortunately ambushed prey. Without the harassment of the big snake, the only sound that could be heard in the crack was the gurgling of water and the croaking of frogs in the distance. Maybe it was because of the 3 consecutive days of intense trekking that Xilin actually fell asleep against a mountain wall in the second half of the night. Moon looked at this rough man with great envy. He only heard Neil say that he had trained himself to sleep standing up when he was a soldier, but he didn't expect to see it for real today. After an unknown amount of time, Moon's eyelids finally started to fight. When he was about to sleep, a glimmer of light from the deep crack instantly woke him up. Looking back at Xilin, who was still stuck in the crack and sleeping, Moon hesitated and walked towards the deep crack. The deeper he went, the narrower the canyon became, until he drilled out of a narrow hole, and the view in front of Moon suddenly became wider. This is the middle of the mountain, surrounded by cliffs, and only a hole through which a river flows connects to the outside. But what really surprised Moon was not this small valley, but a huge willow tree standing in the center of the valley. Moon was very sure that this was a plant with magical properties. Because it was surrounded by green fluorescence, it illuminated the valley shrouded in the night as if it were daytime. Moon remembered very clearly that only one branch of the willow tree he planted outside the greenhouse showed magical properties. The grapevine also only showed a magical range of 2 meters on the main trunk. But the willow tree in front of him, which required more than a dozen people to hug, was emitting green fluorescence from its entire trunk. Seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from Little Wizard. Chapter 33, Fate with the Willow Tree. Moon guessed that trees that can awaken magical properties should have guardians. Just like the mountain pear tree outside, the big snake is its guardian. As for the big willow tree in front of him, Moon gradually determined after observing it that it was the big willow tree itself that was guarding it. And the big willow tree is not only guarding itself, but also some small animals living here. Rabbits, frogs, hedgehogs, these small animals are very quiet nearby. The big willow tree standing here is completely a real guardian. Moon slowly approached the willow tree, and when the green fluorescence shone on his face, a hanging willow branch gently brushed his face. "I'm very sorry, I just need a branch from you." A cool touch came from the willow branch, and Moon thought it was the big tree opposite greeting him. Although he knew that the other party could not speak, Moon still took the initiative to say hello. Rustle rustle, the willow tree fluttered and swayed. The surrounding green fluorescence also began to float regularly, and the small animals that were originally resting nearby all looked at this spectacle. Moon also watched this magical scene, but then he opened his mouth in surprise. Because he found that the huge green fluorescence around was gathering towards the 2 branches. The same thing happened to the willow tree that Moon planted in Hogwarts. It was just that the willow tree took back the magical fluorescence with the help of the botricle, and then it became a wood that could be used to make magic wands. The big willow tree in front of him could actually take back the fluorescence by itself. Can it really understand? The fluorescence continued to gather. Until Moon felt his legs were numb from standing, the gathered fluorescence slowly dispersed. The 2 branches were already crystal green, and they could no longer bear more magical fluorescence. Before Moon could make any move, the big willow tree shook again, and the 2 branches swayed even more violently. Snap snap, 2 crisp snapping sounds were heard, and the branches left the tree and fell to the ground. Moon hurried over to pick them up. When he took the branches in his hands, he was surprised to find that the green fluorescence on the 2 branches had disappeared. Just like the willow branch he saw outside the greenhouse. The magical fluorescence penetrated into the branches, making the branches meet the standard of wood for making wands. Moon looked at the big willow tree in awe, bowed to express his gratitude, and slowly withdrew from the valley. Although Moon didn't understand why the other party wanted to help him, he had to express his gratitude. Xilin said that most of the ancient trees here were more than 1,000 years old, and the big willow tree had obviously lived longer. And the other party could understand his intentions, which made Moon think more while being happy. Is there any connection between this world and the world where Hogwarts is located? Plants will undergo the same magical mutations, and there will also be magical animals guarding them, just like the big snake outside. Moon's thinking did not last long. When he was about to return, Xilin's urgent shouting came from the crack of the valley. "Where have you been?" The big snake that was hiding outside just now suddenly became manic and ran away. "When I turned around, you disappeared. I'm very sorry, I just went inside to take a look." Seeing Xilin's anxious expression, Moon hurriedly apologized. He knew that the fierce man in front of him was actually concerned about him. "Wait, did you find the wood you wanted?" Seeing that Moon was holding 2 branches as thick as his arms, Xilin looked over curiously. "It's nothing, it's just 2 willow branches." After just glancing at the wood in Moon's hand, Xilin turned his head to the outside again. "Although I don't know what the big snake outside is crazy about, let's wait until dawn before going out." Moon did not question Xilin's caution. He was thin and could move a little in the gap. It was easy for him to hold on until dawn. Xilin could only stay in one position and was stuck there. It must be uncomfortable. Fortunately, it was not long before dawn. When a ray of sunlight finally shone into the gap, Xilin couldn't wait to squeeze out, and Moon followed closely. Along the direction of the river valley, Moon could see the traces of the snake sliding by last night. Xilin had always guessed that it was a brown bear or a more powerful beast, otherwise it would not be possible to scare away the snake. However, The two of them carefully sneaked in the river valley for a long time and did not find any traces of other animals. It's really strange. Could it be an iron eagle flying in the sky? Xilin searched in the trees for a long time, but did not find any large birds. It was not until a lot of hares and squirrels appeared around that Xilin gradually relaxed. These small animals are more alert than humans. They can come out to forage so unscrupulously, which means that there is no danger around for the time being. After knowing that the snake suddenly escaped last night, Moon had always suspected that it was related to the big willow tree in the valley. Now that all the evidence is combined, he is more certain. It was the huge guardian that scared away the snake. It has been the 5th day since we came out of the forest farm. Neil couldn't wait to wait at the intersection of the forest farm into the mountain. If he hadn't been worried about taking the wrong road into the mountain, he might have gone in to look for Moon. Uncle Neil, are you familiar with Uncle Xilin? On the way back to Xilin, Moon asked the question that he had been curious about for a long time. They spent a lot of effort to go into the mountains this time. Xilin protected himself all the way. Even when he encountered a big snake, he did not abandon himself who was a burden at that time. We joined the army together, of course we are familiar with each other, but it is not my face that he can help you like this. Neil was riding on a horse, and his expression was no longer as nervous as when he was in the forest farm. He was dug out from the pile of dead bodies by your father. If he dares not to be devoted to you, I will definitely not forgive him. No wonder Neil repeatedly asked the owner of the forest farm to send the best forest rangers Xilin to escort Moon before going into the mountains. It turned out that they had such a fate. After returning from the forest farm, Moon moved back to the cabin in the hazelnut forest again. It was very quiet here and no one disturbed him. It was very suitable for him to do some magic-related things in secret. The 2 branches taken from the big willow tree were 1 meter long. If they could all be made into magic wands, about 6 to 8 wands could be obtained. Of course, this is based on the premise that Moon guarantees that he will not fail. But this is impossible. Moon, who has a good wood-carving skill, knows very well that even a very skilled master cannot guarantee that there will be no mistakes when carving. In order to ensure the success rate, Moon chose to try some ordinary wood first. Only after he became proficient, he was ready to use the branches of the big willow tree. Another thing is the core material. Moon's wand at Hogwarts is a core made of unicorn tail hair. It should not be difficult to buy this in the UK. Moon still has 50 gold galleons on him, which should be enough for him to purchase and practice. And it becomes very difficult to find the hair of magical animals in Xilin. But there is still a way. After seeing the big snake, Moon has been able to confirm that there are magical animals in this world. In this case, the secret legend he heard when he was a child has become the best way for him to find the core material. Chapter 34 Return to Hogwarts. Ever since he saw the big snake guarding the mountain pear tree, Moon was sure that there were magical animals in this world. If you count it this way, the first person who told him the story of magical animals was not the professors and classmates at Hogwarts. It was his only friend in Xilin, Brad Foster from the monastery. As the oldest herder family in Xilin and even in Liuyan City, the Foster family is familiar with everything related to horses. Because Brad's grandfather and father were responsible for herding for the Baron of Xilin before the establishment of the Federation. After the establishment of the Federation, they were afraid of being liquidated, so the whole family had to join the monastery and become servants who raised horses for monks. As for Moon and Brad's acquaintance, it was because the horses ate the lettuce grown on the farm, and the two fought each other, and then slowly became good friends. When he was a child, Brad often told Moon some strange things that their ancestors encountered when raising horses. Among them, his favorite story was that there was a mysterious herd of wild horses at the foot of Snow Eagle Mountain. The material of the wand core that Moon envisioned came from this legendary herd of wild horses. Of course, they must be guaranteed to be magical animals. But this time the time was not enough. It took 6 days to find the willow branch and bring it back. After the arduous journey back and forth, Moon slept for another day after returning to the cabin. He would return to Hogwarts tonight, and he would have to wait until 7 days later to find Brad. Returning to the warm and familiar bed, listening to the gentle breathing sounds coming from his ears, Moon gradually fell asleep again. Accompanied by the birds singing, Moon got up early and went to the greenhouse outside the castle. Before returning to Xilin, only the holly tree had not changed among the 3 plants Moon planted, so he came early to observe the results. Cedric was still sleeping soundly on the bench in the greenhouse, and the botricle climbed up the holly tree. Perhaps his sweet dream was disturbed by the footsteps. Seeing Moon holding the botricle, Cedric rubbed his sleepy eyes and walked over. It's a pity that you didn't see it last night. The holly tree has also changed. Although it is not as good as the willow and the vine, it is also spectacular. Cedric's words did not make Moon feel sorry. In his opinion, learning how to identify magical trees is enough. It's okay. I have got what I want now. By the way, Cedric, don't you want to go back and rest? Looking at the other party's slightly haggard face, Moon kindly reminded him. If you want to go back and make up for your sleep, then this place is left to you. And you have to deal with those grapes as soon as possible. Cedric walked towards the castle after he finished speaking, and Moon turned to look at the grapes and the greenhouse. As a successful harvest of planting saplings, the grapevines grew 5 bunches of grapes after absorbing the growth potion for the first time, and later more and more. Last night, more than 20 bunches were produced. Moon and Cedric relied on these grapes to pass the time at night. Picking up a basket and filling it, Moon locked the greenhouse door and walked out of the castle. He planned to send a basket to Hagrid and escort the botricle who had completed the task back. When he came back from Hagrid's hut, Moon had a few more branches in his hand, which he picked up from the edge of the Forbidden Forest to practice. Because there were not many of those magical woods, he planned to try with these ordinary woods first. After returning to the dormitory with ordinary branches cut into 15-inch sizes and the remaining grapes, his roommates woke up one after another. Morning, Moon. By the way, how are your saplings growing? Harry woke up and greeted the busy Moon. Very successful, but I think you missed a wonderful performance. As soon as Moon finished speaking, Ron, who was sleeping in the bed, jumped up with a start. Wow! There are grapes to eat. Ron got off the bed barefoot, picked up a grape and stuffed it into his mouth. Moon, you really grew the saplings alive, wasn't it just a week ago? Moon didn't tell anyone about the plant growth potion. Cedric should be the only student who knew about it. But everyone should know about it in the herbology class this afternoon. After all, 3 big trees suddenly appeared outside the greenhouse, and the grapevines covered the glass of the greenhouse. This must be something that can't be kept secret. Yes, it's a week, but there was a little magical change in the middle, Moon said, picking out a cut ordinary holly branch. He planned to practice with it today. Are you really planning to make a wand? Ron asked incredulously after taking a sip of grapes while watching Moon's actions. In his opinion, Moon might have planted 3 saplings just because of interest, or he also wanted to join Professor Sprout's club. Anyway, no matter which aspect, Ron never thought that Moon would really make a wand. Because not to mention that making a wand requires some professional magic, the complex production process alone is not something that a first-year student can master. Of course, Moon shook the small wooden stick in his hand briskly, then picked up the waking Bengbeng and prepared to take it to wash first. I don't think this should be made. Seamus also got up from the bed and joined the army eating grapes. Definitely not, that's a wand. I doubt that the professors can make it. Ron's tone was very firm. In his opinion, Moon could make a wand, just like Harry could beat him in wizard chess. There was no hope. Maybe it will work. We have to give it a try, right? Harry has always had a mysterious confidence in Moon, and this feeling of trust has been established since they met in the zoo. I think Moon can do it. This is what Neville said, but no one responded to him. After putting the washbongbong back to the treehouse, Moon took advantage of the time to start the first step of making a wand in the common room. First, use a knife to cut a wooden stick into the shape of a wand, and then take out a piece of sandpaper to polish it. Fortunately, Moon's wood carving toolbox is relatively complete, otherwise these production tools will have to be bought again. Gather the sawdust and pour it into the fireplace. Before the prototype of the wand is polished, Hermione came out of the dormitory. I guess that you read that book not to increase the tacit understanding with the wand. Looking at the prototype of the wand in Moon's hand, Hermione's expression was as if she had discovered a very hidden secret, and she was very proud. Don't get me wrong, I just think I need to test the knowledge I have learned in practice, Moon said as he pushed over a pile of books and a basket of grapes. Also, thank you for your copy of the Oxford Reading Tree. As for the grapes, they are for you. Moon didn't care whether Hermione's guess was correct or not. He couldn't hide what he was going to do next. Although he decided to make a wand, Moon didn't fall behind in his studies. He still listened carefully in the history of magic class, even though Professor Binge's class was very boring. He was carefully writing down the deeds of ancient wizards. But Moon hoped that the next herbology class would come soon. because he wanted to ask Professor Sprout what was going on with the magical big willow tree. Seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 35: The Magical Willow Tree. When the herbology class came on Monday afternoon, the young wizards were still deeply shocked by the big tree outside the greenhouse. Ron finally understood what Moon meant by the little bit of magical changes. Moon, are you sure these are the 3 saplings you dug from the Forbidden Forest? Not the big trees planted by the giants. Looking at the willow tree whose crown was so fluffy that it could accommodate 7 or 8 people, Ron couldn't believe it at all. He still clearly remembered that a week ago he and Harry were playing on the way back with willow branches that were not even as thick as fingers. Of course, they just grow a little faster. Moon's expression was relaxed and his words were very affirmative. Harry also looked at the holly tree on the other side in surprise. He had seen holly trees used as green plants on Privet Street. They were all low plants that were neatly trimmed on both sides of the road, but the one outside the greenhouse had grown to more than 20 feet, which was even taller than the 2-story building of Uncle Vernon's house. Hermione looked at the grapevines climbing all over the glass of the greenhouse. She only now knew where the fruit she ate in the morning came from. Are you sure these ripened grapes are edible? Hermione looked at Moon with a doubtful look. Of course, at least I can guarantee that nothing will happen within 10 days. 10 days is the time from today when Moon ate grapes for the first time, so he dared to say so. After answering Hermione's question, Moon quickly walked into the greenhouse. At this time, Professor Sprout had installed 4 oil lamps in the greenhouse to replace the sunlight blocked by the grapevines. Okay, everyone come in quickly. The sunlight is not very good today. It's just right to learn about red toadstools. After the herbology class was over, Moon found Professor Sprout and asked about the big willow tree. It's very large, and it has magical properties. There are no magical animals guarding it. Sprout thought for a while and muttered softly, is Professor Ben starting to talk about the history of ancient magical plants? Then she shook her head slightly, thinking it was unlikely. Professor Binns is not only the only ghost professor in Hogwarts, but also the most stubborn professor. He seems to have not changed the textbooks he uses in class for the past 100 years. After excluding Professor Binns, Sprout turned his head and looked at Moon. Mr. Scarlett, the characteristics you mentioned should be plants from at least 500 years ago. At that time, Muggles did not have the habit of cutting down trees indiscriminately, so a large number of magical plants survived. When Sprout said this, a regretful expression appeared on her face. In her opinion, it was a great pity that she had not seen those magical plants 500 years ago. Are you sure, Professor? Of course, it could also be thousands of years ago. Isn't this the record you saw in the library? Yes, I saw it in the library, because I don't know if it is true, so I came to ask you. Seeing the professor's puzzled look, Moon answered. Well, there is nothing wrong with reading more, but I think you'd better learn the current herbal plants first. After all, those extinct plants will not come back to life for you to study. Okay, Professor, Moon said, packing up the textbook and leaving the greenhouse. This child will not really study those extinct plants. Sprout attaches great importance to Moon, a little wizard who showed his talent for herbal plants in the 1st grade. However, the direction of Moon's study now makes her feel that something is wrong. After leaving the greenhouse, Moon went directly to the library. He found a book called Ancient Magical Plants in the Herbology book area. It records many magical plants that have long been extinct, as well as some ordinary magical plants that are extremely old. The big willow tree obviously belongs to the latter. According to my observation, when the age of a magical plant reaches a certain level, especially when it is over 1,000 years old, its magical properties will show an explosive growth. Beaumont Majorbanks. Moon had seen this person's name on the chocolate frog card. He was a great pioneer in herbology. The conclusion in the book was the magical knowledge he summarized after he went to the uninhabited area and discovered magical plants. Moon compared the characteristics of magical trees over 1,000 years old described in the book, and he found that none of these big trees were as magical as the big willow tree. Is that big willow tree more than 1,000 years old? After carefully reading the relevant content in the book, Moon decided not to reveal the secret of the big willow tree for the time being. After all, he was just a student who never left the school at Hogwarts, and he was a half-baked spiritualist who had never come into contact with a spellcaster in Xilin. Although Moon couldn't estimate the value of the big willow tree now, he could guess that the appearance of this magical plant would definitely cause a sensation. After putting the book back on the original bookshelf, Moon left the library and went to the hall for dinner. As soon as he stepped into the hall door, he heard Ron's shout. "Isn't it delicious? We have eaten this delicacy a long time ago." Moon thought Ron was talking about some delicacy made by his mother at first, but when he walked to the dining table, he found that he was talking about Hagrid's shortbread. This food actually appeared on the dining table. Moon looked up at the other 3 tables, all of which had this dessert on them. "Ron said that this dish was invented by you and Hagrid." Hermione's voice came from the side, and Moon saw a hint of doubt in her eyes. "Yes, that's right." After Moon answered, he sat down and served himself a bowl of Hagrid's shortbread. After tasting it, he found that the aroma of milk had replaced the taste of tea inside, and the aroma was more mellow. After getting the answer, Hermione also sat down and ate the Hagrid shortbread. This sweet and tender taste was very much to her taste. But now she felt that Moon's specialties were a bit strange. Cooking, planting trees, wood carving, slingshots. Moon was very good at these, but he was very weak in the basic school knowledge that he should master. "It's really strange." Hermione's voice was very low, and it was all covered by Ron's voice. "Moon, you are here. Tell Seamus quickly, have we eaten this dessert a long time ago?" Looking at the concerned eyes of Ron, Seamus and the people around him, Moon nodded heavily. "Look, I didn't lie to you." Ron continued to show off his few special experiences, and Moon turned to look at Hermione. "Where's Harry?" Wood called him to train Quidditch. Hermione's voice was even lower when she said this, not because she didn't want to speak loudly, but because they were all warned by Wood. "Harry will be the secret weapon of the Gryffindor team, and no one can reveal it in advance. Everyone abides by this agreement, and Moon is no exception. But Moon doesn't think this secret can be kept forever. There is still more than a month until Gryffindor's first game of the year, and Harry will inevitably fly high when he is training on the field as a seeker. Those senior classmates who wander outside in pairs after class will always find out the secret that is not a secret." Moon did not stay in the hall for long. Seeing Hagrid's shortbread appear on the dining table, he planned to visit Hagrid. While the sun has not set yet, Moon came to Hagrid's hut again. Knock knock knock. The door of the wooden hut opened, and Hagrid's big bearded face appeared. "Oh, come in quickly, I just need to see you for something." Chapter 36 An Unexpected Gain. Seeing Hagrid's mysterious look, Moon had a strange feeling. "I was just about to send it to you today." After closing the door tightly, Hagrid turned and came to a large package. "You know, they will shed their fur in autumn. There are a lot of these things in the Forbidden Forest," Hagrid said as he took out a tangled ball of silver-white threads from the package in front of him. "What is this?" Moon had never seen threads with such pure color. They even emitted a faint silver-white light, which illuminated the fine lines on Hagrid's palm very clearly. "Oh, I forgot you hadn't seen it before. This is unicorn tail hair. I saved a handful for you," Hagrid said as he stuffed a thread into Moon's hand. Looking at the silver-white tail hair that Hagrid could barely hold in his hand, and he had to use both hands to completely hold it, Moon asked curiously. "There are at least thousands of them, right, Roots? Should we use roots to describe these little things? I always use a handful, a bundle or a bag or something." "Are there a lot of unicorns in the Forbidden Forest?" Seeing Hagrid scratching his head in confusion, Moon asked the question in his heart. "Not many, only 100 or so. This may be the last unicorn group in Britain." Hagrid would inevitably feel sad when talking about these things. He always thought that the unicorn group could have lived freely in the forest instead of being trapped in the Forbidden Forest. He thought that this would make the unicorn group larger. "In fact, you have done a good job." After deciding to make a magic wand, Moon specifically looked up some books on unicorns. He knew that this magical animal was rarely touched by men, and it was a great thing for Hagrid to take care of them in the Forbidden Forest. "Oh, thank you." Hagrid's sad expression came and went quickly, and he continued to talk while looking at the unicorn tail hair in Moon's hand. "I know you're making a wand. This is a relatively easy to get wand core material. It should be enough for your experiment." Hagrid was right. Although there are many wand core materials, the mainstream ones in the UK are dragon heartstrings and unicorn tail hair. Of course, This mainstream is also controlled by the Ollivander family, and outside the UK, there are many people who use wand cores such as vela hair, troll whiskers, and leopard hair. But it's even more difficult to get these materials. Moon originally wanted to use gold galleons to buy a batch of wand core materials. Now Hagrid has prepared so many unicorn tail hairs, which saves him a lot of expenses. Thank you very much, no need to do that. Unicorns have to change their hair anyway. There are a lot of these tail hairs in the Forbidden Forest now. I just picked them up casually. Hagrid's words reminded Moon of his only friend in the Xilin, the horse breeder Gerald. He once told Moon that horses would shed some old hair in the fall and grow a denser and thicker fine hair to cope with a cold winter. And unicorns, which are similar to horses, should have the same experience. Well, since you said so, I'll take it. Moon put the tail hair into his pocket and then looked at Hagrid again. By the way, I ate Hagrid's shortbread in the Great Hall today. When Moon asked this question, he saw Hagrid's mouth corners unconsciously raised. Yes, this is what I recommended to Dumbledore. He also likes sweets very much, and the menu of the Great Hall has not changed for decades. Hagrid explained that he gave the final version of Hagrid's shortbread to Dumbledore, and then it won the favor of the headmaster as expected. Dumbledore even specially sent the house elves to learn the production process. You didn't see that they have a very strong learning ability. They can learn it after just watching it once. However, they have been suggesting that the rock skin cake should be changed from baking to steaming, but I disagreed, Hagrid said and gave Moon a playful look. Why don't you agree? Moon immediately understood what Hagrid meant and took over his words without any hesitation. Oh, this is the soul of Hagrid's shortbread, isn't it? Of course. Seeing Hagrid's extremely proud expression, Moon also agreed very happily. Moon talked with Hagrid for a long time. He took some spare branches from here and visited the pumpkin field behind the hut. According to Hagrid, the pumpkins here are all prepared for Halloween, but now the pumpkins are not ripe, so some bugs have been attracted to eat pumpkins. Near the evening, returning from Hagrid's hut. As soon as Moon entered the dormitory, he heard Ron shouting. What's the matter, Scabbers? Your hair is all over the sheets. Scabbers, lying on the bed, ignored Ron and looked very tired. Moon subconsciously looked at Boing Boing and found that it was just waving the old magic wand toy, so he was a little relieved. Put the unicorn tail hair into the suitcase, then take out a branch from under the bed, and go to the common room. The wooden stick in the morning has been carved. Even though Moon had experience in wood carving, crafts like making wands, which pay more attention to fine touch, are indeed somewhat difficult. In fact, carving and polishing the prototype of the wand are not difficult for Moon. The difficulty now is how to separate the wand perfectly. The book says that this step must be split along the grain of the wood itself, otherwise the wand with a destroyed structure will not be able to guide magic. The book is very brief, but Moon knows that sometimes the fewer words, the more difficult it is. Before the wood grain is split, it is impossible to predict its direction. He can only control the direction of the knife with extremely fine feelings. This is a very difficult challenge for Moon. Throwing the badly carved wooden stick into the fireplace, Moon began to make the next one under a bright flame. After the new wooden stick was polished again, Moon began to learn magic today. Hermione, who was sitting not far away, wanted to talk, but seeing Moon's serious attitude towards learning, she had to give up the idea of communication. The next morning, there was another bright flame in the fireplace. Moon had no choice but to start carving and polishing again. Fortunately, the bad luck in making wands did not affect Moon's performance in class. In the morning's herbology class, Moon once again perfectly mastered the planting and care methods of Goosegrass, and he was rewarded with another house point. In the afternoon's charms class, Professor Flitwick explained a new spell, the fire spell. As the most basic of all fire spells, Professor Flitwick requires all students to master it, and also left a 15-inch homework on the derivation of fire spells. In the transfiguration class, Professor McGonagall asked students to turn quills into pens, which is much more difficult than turning matches into needles. Moon tried 3 times before he succeeded. When Moon finished his homework in the library and returned to the dormitory in the evening, he heard Ron scream again. Scabby, where's your beard? I am asking for the Little Wizard's follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets. Chapter 37 Hermione's Warning. Moon, who returned to the dormitory, originally planned to come back and polish a few more branches. Fortunately, he tried to split the wand several times in the morning. because he found that as long as he tried one action continuously, he could find that subtle feeling. And now he just needed to practice and master this subtle feeling of splitting. However, after hearing Ron's shout, Moon also stopped curiously and watched the gray mouse lying motionless on the bed. "Is it asleep?" Neville asked uncertainly, looking at the mouse in Ron's arms. "It should be. When Scabbers is very tired, he will sleep peacefully like this." Ron spoke with a little crying, and his hands kept touching both sides of the mouse's nose. The 7 or 8 whiskers that were originally left there all disappeared. Seeing that there was a neat cut surface at the break of the whiskers, Moon immediately ruled out the suspicion of Bengbeng. Because he knew very well that Bengbeng's little claws could not do this. But what Moon didn't know was that at this time, a pair of small eyes also poked out from the treehouse, and it was aiming at the gray mouse Scabbers not far away. Harry had just returned from the bathroom. He was called by Wood to practice Quidditch after class, and he didn't have a good dinner. After finding out why Ron was sad, Harry comforted his good brother. "Don't be sad, Ron. How about we find a box or something and keep Scabbers in it, so that it can be protected?" Harry's proposal was supported by everyone, but they didn't find a box, but used a basket for dirty clothes. Before going to bed at night, Moon polished the prototypes of 3 wands. At this time, most people had returned to the dormitory to sleep. Moon did not choose to read again, because there was no need to preview tomorrow's class. In the morning, there was a defense against the dark arts class full of garlic, a very relaxing herbology class in the afternoon, and then an astronomy class at 11 o'clock in the evening. Of these 3 classes, Moon disliked the defense against the dark arts class the most, because after a whole class, he felt that he was polluted. The next morning, there were 3 more bright flames in the fireplace without surprise. Moon had no choice but to polish new wooden sticks again. Fortunately, there were no homework assignments for the daytime classes, which gave Moon more time to do his own things. However, when Moon was concentrating on his work in front of the fireplace at night, Hermione finally couldn't help but come over. "I think you should pay attention to Boom." Moon was polishing his wand with sandpaper. Hearing Hermione's words for no reason, he looked up and looked at him in confusion. "I took the wrong stairs when I came back from the library today." Hearing Hermione's incoherent words, Moon was even more confused. He was busy recently, so he didn't go to the library with Hermione to read. But taking the wrong stairs is something that every little lion will encounter. "What can I say about it?" "What do you want to say?" Moon asked his doubts. "I mean, I want to say that I took the wrong stairs and saw Boom riding on Mrs. Norris." "Oh, Filch's cat. They are friends. There's nothing strange about that," Moon said and lowered his head to continue polishing his work. Seeing that Moon didn't understand yet, Hermione became even more anxious. But they were chasing Ron's mouse. The case was solved. Moon finally knew why Bengbeng had been so honest these 2 days. It turned out that he was doing something big behind his back. "Thank you for telling me." After Moon thanked Hermione, he hurried back to the dormitory. At this time, everyone in the dormitory gathered around the old basket where Scabbers lived. "What are the claw marks on it?" Seamus looked at the 3 bright red blood marks on Scabbers curiously. Could it be an owl? Neville's unexpected words made everyone suddenly feel that they had found the murderer. There are many owls in Hogwarts, and they all eat mice, which made Ron very uneasy. Ron, do you want to send the mouse to the school infirmary first?" "I don't think it's in a good spirit." Moon only took a look at the scars on the grey mouse, and he knew very well that it was the claw marks of a cat. At York Farm, every spring, he could always see some wild cats fighting because of estrus, and the claw marks on their bodies were exactly the same as those on Scabbers. After Moon's reminder, Ron left the dormitory sadly holding the grey mouse, and Moon also came to the common room with Bengbeng. He found a secluded place and put Bengbeng on his lap. "Bengbeng, it's wrong for you to do this." "Chi, what happened?" "Someone saw you with Mrs. Norris." "Chi-ji, no way, we hid very well." Bengbeng said something and found that he was exposed, and quickly covered his long mouth with his little paws. "Promise me not to bother that grey mouse again in the future, okay?" Moon's expression was very serious, and Bengbeng's little black eyes blinked at him. "Chi-ji, it doesn't matter whether the mouse is bad or not. As long as you know that it is injured, Ron will be unhappy. It's the red-haired boy. He also brought you lamb chops." Bengbeng stared at Moon closely, as if thinking about the meaning of such a long sentence. After a long time, it nodded reluctantly. "Okay, don't be unhappy. Next time we go to Hagrid, let's ask him for more dried worms, okay?" After getting Bung's response, Moon was relieved. He was really afraid that Bung would cause trouble for the mouse again. Although Moon didn't like the mouse the first time he saw it, it was Ron's pet after all, and he had no right to interfere. Seeing Moon sending Bung back to the dormitory, Hermione came over quietly again. "I'm very sorry, I don't know if I did the right thing." Hermione was referring to what she had just told on Bung. Moon didn't care about this matter, and he even wanted to thank him. But Hermione's attitude made him curious. In his eyes, Hermione has always been a very strong person. After a month of getting along, he has never seen Hermione express apology to anyone. It doesn't matter, Bung has agreed not to cause trouble for the mouse. Hearing Moon say this, Hermione was obviously relieved. "Actually, it's very smart, isn't it? I mean, Bengbeng. You see, it will find the natural enemy of mice to subdue them. This is not a skill that ordinary animals can master." Yes, I didn't expect it either. It was only tonight that Moon figured out why Bengbeng had such a strong fishy smell on his body some time ago. It should have caught fish for Mrs. Norris to eat, and then got in touch with the castle manager's pet, and then it caused trouble for the gray mouse. From this point of view, Bengbeng is smarter than Hermione thought. Hermione left on her own after chatting for a while. Although she didn't know why Moon was so obsessed with making magic wands, she didn't want to interfere too much. When Moon was getting ready to go to bed at night, Ron came back holding Scabbers. A big band-aid was pasted on the body of this gray mouse, like raising a white surrender flag. Bengbeng, keep your voice down asking for the follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets in the hands of the little wizard. Chapter 38, Evolution of Fire Spells. On Thursday morning, as expected, the fire in the fireplace was a little more vigorous. Moon had not prepared many small wooden sticks, but fortunately his skills had improved a lot. From the beginning, he could only split less than an inch, but now he can accurately split 5 inches. Not only that, the constant practice of splitting wood with the feeling of the knife has greatly improved Moon's ability to accurately control the wand. After eating a bowl of hot Hagrid shortbread in the auditorium in the morning, Moon made up for the energy he lost in the failure to split wood early in the morning. The transfiguration class in the morning was still moving forward. Professor McGonagall said that the first grade needed to master the conversion between two fixed material objects. Therefore, in order to let the little wizards master transfiguration, she would only pick some simple items. If someone really couldn't master it, she could only deduct points from the corresponding college. The reason why Professor McGonagall became more strict was that she felt that after a month of adaptation, the little wizards had become familiar with the school environment. The excitement before the start of school must now be transformed into hard work. From this point of view alone, Moon became a student that McGonagall admired more. She knew very well how weak Moon's foundation was before the start of school. But now, after only 1 month at Hogwarts, Moon had already made up for most of the basic knowledge and could master the key points of magic as quickly as Hermione. Seeing Moon easily turn the quill on the table into a fountain pen, and then turn the fountain pen back into a quill, McGonagall supervised the others more vigorously. Of course, being able to meet the requirements of the professors has advantages and disadvantages. Professor Flitwick's spells class just verified this. This short professor is very knowledgeable and can always explain each spell in a humorous way. Okay, students left everyone an assignment on the evolution of fire spells in the last class. Professor Flitwick rarely mentioned homework at the beginning of class, so when he mentioned homework, Neville, who was sitting next to Moon, was stunned. "Professor, the homework was assigned the day before yesterday, and we haven't had time to do it yet." Ron's voice came from behind. "Of course, I know very well that I asked you to hand it in next week, but today I want to give you a direction, because this assignment is not easy." After Professor Flitwick finished speaking, Moon noticed that Hermione, who was sitting in front of him, suddenly raised her head. "Oh, of course, I guess you may have finished it, Miss Granger, but I think today's class will definitely help you to improve this assignment again." Hermione was never defeated by homework, and she didn't mind even if she had to rewrite it, but Moon was a little disappointed. He finished his homework in advance just to have time to make a wand, but now he would probably have to rewrite it. Moon's disappointment did not last long, because Professor Flitwick began to explain. "In the last class, we explained the fire spell, but it is actually not the most basic thing about fire spells." As a knowledgeable master of spells, Professor Flitwick gradually unfolded the history of fire magic and stuffed it into the heads of young wizards. As one of the first few magics mastered by wizards, Fire was originally just a respect and exploration of natural forces by wizards. In ancient Egypt, wizards at that time used thoughts, gestures, and chanting to make the flames in front of them more vigorous or willing to move. This instinctive exploration without a systematic theory was the initial form of the flame spell. Later, as the exploration deepened, wizards summed up some spells with gestures, and there were spells such as fire and fire. However, the flame spells at this time only had the functions of lighting, cooking, and heating, and their power was very limited. In the era when Hogwarts was established, the flame magic was greatly developed. At this time, there appeared spells specifically used to generate high-temperature flames for forging metals and burning obstacles. The most typical representative spells are burning flames and thunder explosion. Another branch is constantly developing in lighting, heating, and cooking. When Professor Flitwick talked about this, Ron reacted. He never thought that his mother's skills in the kitchen were also in the history of magic. That's right, Mr. Weasley. The fire spells in cooking were developed by great witches like your mother. Ron's face flushed. He never thought that the first time he was praised by the professor would be because of his nagging mother. Of course, there are more advanced forms of fire magic, but this requires you to have extremely high talent, otherwise you will not be able to touch them at all in 7 years of school. For example, our headmaster Dumbledore has mastered more than one advanced fire magic. Looking at the curious eyes of the little wizards in the audience, Professor Flitwick stopped the lecture at the right time. Delicious and sweet bait always attracts fish. Now the little wizards in the spell class have been interested in the bait thrown by Flitwick. As the recognized greatest wizard of the contemporary era, Dumbledore has always been at the center of public opinion. Listening to the lively discussion of the little wizards, Flitwick nodded with satisfaction. Now he is sure that he will receive a perfect homework. As for Moon, he also feels the need to rewrite it. The most important thing is what advanced fire magic Dumbledore has mastered, which has become the curiosity of all the young wizards. Professor Flitwick's hook worked. As soon as the morning class ended, the young wizards had a simple meal in the hall and went to the library. They borrowed all the books on fire magic. Because the number of people suddenly increased, Madame Pants had to remind everyone to keep their voices down again and again. Professor Flitwick's method is old-fashioned, but it really works. Percy was also in the library and found that the young wizards were reading books about fire magic. He couldn't help but think of himself in the first grade. Prefect, have you mastered advanced fire magic? Hearing Moon's address to him, Percy smiled unconsciously. Advanced fire magic, that is not something that students can master. Just listen to Professor Flitwick's words. Ron, who was sitting next to him, frowned when he heard this. He didn't show off in his studies. This was not the Percy he knew. Hermione also reacted. As a first-year student, she had a good relationship with Percy. Because of this, she also knew that Percy would not lie about this matter. Is it possible that even if you get excellent grades in all subjects, you can't master this kind of advanced magic? Hermione felt a sense of loss in her heart, but she quickly forced this feeling away. She would not give up in her studies. Moon did not care about what Percy said. What he remembered most clearly was Professor Flitwick's original words. To master advanced fire magic, you need extremely high talent. How high is Dumbledore's talent? This raised a question in Moon's mind. Please give me follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 39, Adding Wood to the Fireplace. None of the young wizards could find out the knowledge points about advanced fire magic. This was because all the books related to this part were placed in the restricted book area. Even Hermione had the courage to ask Professor Flitwick for a permit, but was not approved. This time, Ron did not laugh at Hermione, who was full of confidence but could not get a permit in the end. Because he also wanted to see these advanced fire magic. After learning that Hermione did not get the permit, Moon sat back and started to do his homework again. In his original homework, he did not write about the connection between fire spells, especially those about cooking and life. Although Moon has now joined Hogwarts, he has always believed that magic and ordinary life are two things that cannot be integrated. He never thought that even the smallest things in life can be related to fire magic. For example, Ron often said that his mother used magic to iron clothes. This kind of life full of magic shadows gave Moon a kind of expectation. In the afternoon flying class, Moon finally tried to fly. After the last lesson, Madame Hooch only allowed everyone to be 6 feet above the ground. This was also the distance she could reach out to pull the little wizards. Of course, she also agreed that students with flying talents could practice freely. Harry became the darling of the flying class. He flew fast and steadily, and the whole sky above the grass was filled with his laughter. "Come on, Moon, I know you can do it," Harry's voice came from above, but Moon ignored it. His broom was no match for the Nimbus 2000, so he kept flying steadily at an altitude of 6 feet. Although the vision at this height was not very good, Moon had become more and more proficient in the control of the broom. He also began to gradually master the basic flying techniques such as turning and emergency braking. Malfoy, who was not far away, stared angrily at Harry at the top. His broom was also provided by the school, and he couldn't even catch up with the tail of Harry's broom. As for Neville, he almost got all the attention of Madame Hooch. He was also the only little wizard who practiced communicating with the broom throughout the class. Get up, get up, get up. With Neville's repeated get up, the flying class ended. Moon, who had finished his spell homework in the evening, started to add wood to the fireplace. He had failed 15 times. After sweeping the wood chips into the fireplace again, Moon took out 5 sticks and started carving. On Friday morning, Moon got up earlier than usual. Because today, in addition to adding wood to the fireplace, he also had to preview the potion course. If coming to Hogwarts to learn magic is fun, then Snape's potion class is the only shadow of the Gryffindor Little Lions. Even Hermione, who studies the best, is no exception. Last week, she was judged by Snape to be not abiding by classroom discipline because of answering questions quickly and was deducted 1 point. Therefore, the 2 consecutive potion classes on Friday became the main battlefield for Gryffindor freshmen to protect their college points. Of course, in addition to Professor Snape's strict and slightly biased teaching method, the heavy and practical potion learning itself is also one of the reasons why freshmen lose points. It has only been 3 weeks since the start of school, and Moon is about to learn the 3rd potion. This kind of strong indoctrination of new knowledge every week makes people doubt the professor's intentions. But Snape obviously didn't care about that. As soon as the class started, he hurried to the podium with his cloak swung. After calling the roll, he asked Harry as usual, and then belittled him again. "Well, I hope you won't be like Potter, who didn't know the key points after preparing for the class." After Snape finished talking to Harry with a lingering feeling, he stared at Moon and Neville who were sitting in front of him. "Mr. Longbottom. This time I hope you can do it yourself." Neville swallowed his saliva and nodded hard. "Okay. Next, turn to page 17. Today we are going to make a potion to treat cuts." Neville participated in the whole process this time, but he did every step under the guidance of Moon. "Wait, put only 1 piece of hemostatic grass at a time, then, add the healing fern, only a small section at a time. Finally, put the whole flower of the calming flower in, and be careful not to grind it too much." Neville was using a mortar to process the herbs, and Moon was directing him while stirring the crucible. The pure spring water and a pinch of dragon scale powder were boiled on the fire. This boiled liquid can tighten the skin and help wounds heal. After the first lesson, Moon was not confident in letting Neville touch this semi-finished product. Because the book records that this unformed liquid will produce a strong contraction force after contacting the skin, and Moon dare not think about the consequences. Add the ground herbs to the crucible 3 times, and then boil it over high heat until the liquid is about to become transparent. Then turn off the heat immediately, and then add a drop of elf tears and stir quickly. When the liquid turns into blue crystal clear paste, the potion for healing cuts is considered to be successfully boiled. This is Professor Snape's highest comment on the work results of Moon and Neville in 2 classes. After class in the morning, Moon quickly finished his meal and brought Bengbeng to the edge of the Forbidden Forest again. His small wooden sticks have all turned into ashes in the fireplace, and he must prepare another batch. As for Bengbeng, Moon promised it to come to Hagrid to ask for some snacks of dried insects. After returning from the edge of the Forbidden Forest, Moon went to the greenhouse to check the growth of the 3 big trees. After no longer applying the potion, the growth rate of the 3 big trees slowed down significantly. The small cut that Moon made on the willow tree also recovered, and it grew into a raised bump. Using his fingers to indicate the location of the bump, Moon found that the magical properties of the willow tree had grown by 5 inches in this week. "I think they are still digesting the potion residue." Cedric appeared in the greenhouse again. He looked at the bundle of small sticks at Moon's feet and was obviously relieved. "I think the professor is still too suspicious. She thought you wanted to study those long-extinct plants." Although Cedric did not say the name, Moon knew which professor he was talking about. In the herbology class on Monday, Moon asked Professor Sprout some questions about the big willow tree out of curiosity. But he didn't expect the professor to care so much about his behavior. Of course, I'm still making wands, but my progress is slow, don't be discouraged. The wand is the brightest star in plant magic for more than 2,000 years. I think it's amazing that you can make it in a year. Moon automatically ignored the time Cedric said. He admitted that he was slow in making wands, but he never thought of a year. Of course, I didn't expect you to choose making wands as a ticket to enter the club, Cedric said and shook his head regretfully. He thought that the club would welcome the youngest member this year, which would be a glorious achievement for him to become the club secretary. However, seeing Moon's determined eyes, Cedric added, of course, if you can succeed, this will be the most powerful ticket since the establishment of the club, seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. Chapter 40 Hermione's Doubts. Before leaving, Cedric ordered the sawdust produced by carving magical trees for Moon. Although he didn't know what the other party was going to do, Moon readily agreed. This warm-hearted senior put a lot of effort in taking care of the 3 big trees, and it was just sawdust, which was not of much value to Moon. The practice of splitting wood continued. When Moon was about to return to Xilin on Sunday night, more than 20 flames appeared in the fireplace. At this time, he was able to split the stick steadily and accurately to the thinnest tip. Moon, who returned to Xilin, also prepared a large bundle of hazelnut wood. He had to complete the final splitting sprint in these 7 days. At the same time, Moon did not forget to find the core material of the stick, which required him to find his only friend in Xilin. The horse-raising servant of the monastery, Brad Foster. The Foster family was a very famous horse herder when it was under the rule of the Melanie Empire. Not only did they understand the various habits of horses and were good at treating horse diseases, their most famous skill was breeding mares. As long as the employer gives them the mare at home and then goes for a walk on the grassland. Soon after returning, the mare at the employer's home will give birth to a strong little war horse. Everyone wants to know the secret of the Foster family, but at that time, they were protected by the Baron and no one wanted to provoke them. Later, when the Federation was established, their family lost their protection and had to choose to join the monastery. When Moon was 7 years old, he learned the secret of this family that had been guarded for 100 years from Brad, who was herding horses. When he found Brad, who was feeding the monks' horses, this boy, who was a head taller than Moon, had matured a lot. After the two exchanged greetings, Moon directly explained his purpose. No, Snow Eagle Mountain has become a place where the army is stationed on the front line. It's too dangerous there. Brad rolled up his blue-gray coarse cloth, cleaned the trough, and poured in new feed. I know it's dangerous there, but, Brad, Moon looked at him firmly. I really need to find something, or you can draw me a rough map range, and I can find it myself. Brad stopped using the shovel to clean the stable, turned his head and looked at Moon in confusion. Have you changed? Moon was confused by the sentence without a beginning or an end. Seeing Moon's puzzled expression, Brad continued, you never asked for help before. Moon also recalled unconsciously, and he found that he had indeed smiled more since entering Hogwarts. The little boy who used to be entangled and laughed at every day had left his body for a long time. Although I don't know what you have been through, since you said so, I will definitely help you, but you have to give me time to find it. After all, it was my grandfather's thing. After getting Brad's assurance, Moon happily helped him clean the stable. When returning to the farmhouse, Moon bought 2 pots of water bottle grass on the street. This is a plant that some local families in Xilin put in the kitchen to catch insects. Because winter is approaching, the price of this plant has also dropped, 1 federal silver coin for 2 pots. This price was still affordable for Moon. After the harvest was completed last week, he received a year's salary, 10 silver coins. A new conscription notice was posted in the center of the cross street, indicating that the war was still being prepared. But Moon found that life did not seem to have changed much. His salary did not drop sharply, and the price of the 2 pots of flowers was the same as in previous years. When he threw this question to Neil, who is often responsible for purchasing supplies for the farm, he got an answer. It will take a long time to prepare for the war, and this is just the beginning. This week, Moon locked himself in the cabin in the forest. After wasting nearly 100 pieces of wood, he finally perfectly split a hazelnut wood model wand. This was also the happiest thing for Moon before returning to Hogwarts. That night, he returned to Hogwarts with 2 pots of water bottle grass. After placing the flower pots neatly on the windowsill and saying hello to Bengbeng, Moon really had a good sleep in 10 days. After getting up in the morning, Moon couldn't wait to take out a willow branch to experiment with his skills. In order to save time, Moon used hazelnut wood that he could get at hand when carving in Xilin. Compared with the straight lines of hazelnut wood, willow wood is relatively soft, and the internal texture is mostly diagonal, which makes it more difficult to split it perfectly. Fortunately, a lot of practice has made Moon's hands delicate. The sharp blade in his hand is not only a cutting tool, but also his eyes to explore the texture. The third willow wood in the morning was finally perfectly split. The texture is clearly visible, there is no cut-off place, and there is not even a bit of sawdust. Moon let out a long breath and split 2 small wooden sticks in succession. He now has to accumulate materials for the next step: embedding the wand core. This step is not simpler than splitting wood, and it is even more difficult because the wood needs to perfectly adapt to the size of the wand core. Carefully tie up the 3 split wooden sticks and slowly put them into the box for the wand. Moon just breathed a sigh of relief when Hermione's voice came from the stairs of the girls' dormitory. "You split it so quickly. Hermione should be the student who can best understand the difficulty of wand making, because she has also finished reading wand making and maintenance." The method of splitting a wand recorded in the book has long been upgraded from pure tools to combined with spells. Even 200 years ago, when wand making and maintenance was written, the Ollivander family had already mastered the use of splitting magic to quickly and conveniently complete this step. However, Moon chose to use the most primitive method from the beginning, which was simply a very irrational behavior in Hermione's opinion. She was very clear about the difficulty of mastering this method. The Ollivander family even stipulated that mastering this ancient splitting method was a skill that must be mastered in order to take over the wand shop. "Yes, 3, Moon showed a little pride on his face. "How is this possible?" The book said that people in the Ollivander family need to practice for more than 3 years to master this skill. "Hermione, you may have forgotten that I have been carving wood for 3 years." Seeing Hermione's doubtful expression, Moon also pointed out his advantage, which was not an advantage. Although wood carving and wand making are 2 different things, they both require the maker to know the wood in his hands very well. Of course, Moon was able to complete this step so quickly, thanks to the fact that he had time to practice a lot in Xilin. This short-term sprint made him more sensitive to the texture of wood. "Well, congratulations, but I've always been curious why you don't use a wand to split the wood." "Why, of course I don't even have a wand in Xilin," Moon muttered in his heart, and then explained with an evasive look. "I just want to study how it felt when the first wand was made." After saying this, Moon hurriedly left the common room. Hermione, who was standing there, muttered, "What a strange person, seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the little wizard." Chapter 41 Hagrid's Invitation. Learning is like digging a hole for the wand core. As long as you make a little progress every day, you will always gain something. This is the experience that Moon has summed up after digging holes for the wand core for 2 consecutive days. In order to ensure that the magical properties of the wand wood are not destroyed, the wand core must also be seamlessly inlaid according to the original texture of the wood. Fortunately, Moon's feel for finding textures has been trained and strengthened. This time, there were only 5 more flames in the fireplace, and a perfect hole for the wand core was dug out. Puff gently blowing away the sawdust, Moon admired his latest work in the light coming into the room from outside. After making sure that no tiny texture was damaged, he rubbed his eyes and looked into the distance to relieve fatigue. Today is Wednesday. After 2 days, the water bottle grass that Moon brought from Xilin has also adapted to the environment of Hogwarts. A total of 7 or 8 flowers in the 2 flower pots have opened their caps, as if asking for food. It's time to find some food for these carnivorous flowers. Thinking of this, Moon carried the 2 flower pots out of the castle and walked towards the Forbidden Forest. He brought this carnivorous flower to Hogwarts to see if it could help Hagrid get rid of the bugs that stole the pumpkins. When he saw Hagrid again, Moon explained his purpose directly. "You said this flower eats bugs." Hagrid's 2 big hands had already taken the flower pot, and his eyes were curiously staring at the plant in his hand. "Yes, in my hometown, they are often placed in the kitchen to clean up mosquitoes, but I don't know if the bugs in the pumpkin field will be fooled. I think they should. After all, these small flying insects are similar to flies and mosquitoes." Hagrid didn't doubt it too much, and he led Moon to the pumpkin field behind the house. After a week, the pumpkins in this vegetable garden have become the size of footballs. The dark green melon skin has not hardened yet, but the fragrance of the pumpkin has attracted many flying insects that come to steal. Hagrid placed 2 pots of water bottle grass on both sides of the field, according to Moon's instructions. Then he and Moon watched quietly on the side. The buzzing of the surrounding flying insects seemed to trigger the switch of the water bottle grass. These white flowers began to open the bottle caps one by one, and a strange smell began to float around. This smell is exactly what Aquarius flower uses to attract insects. Moon could see the attracted flying insects gathering around the flower. Attracted by the fragrance of the flower, these flying insects lined up and drilled into the bottle of Aquarius plant. "Wow, this is much better than the insecticide I bought in Nocturne Alley," Hagrid exclaimed happily when he saw that Aquarius plant had trapped more than a dozen flying insects in just half an hour. Nocturne Alley? Moon looked at Hagrid curiously. He saw in the book that this seemed to be a place that specialized in selling black wizard supplies. "Oh, you know, there will always be some powerful but cheap things there." After hearing Hagrid's explanation, Moon couldn't help but become a little suspicious. You should not be short of money to guard such a large forbidden forest. Moon remembered the unicorn tail hair Hagrid gave him last time. Just a handful of it would definitely cost hundreds of gold galleons outside. "Don't say that. All the property in the forbidden forest belongs to Hogwarts. I am only responsible for guarding and collecting it, but I have no right to dispose of it at will." "Then the unicorn tail hair you gave me won't cause you any trouble, will it?" "How could it be? It was arranged by—" Hagrid suddenly shut his mouth tightly, and then looked at Moon. "There are a lot every year. One more or one less won't matter, okay?" Although Moon saw that Hagrid was hiding something, he didn't plan to ask further. After all, that unicorn tail hair really helped him a lot. When the sun set and Moon was about to leave, Hagrid stopped him again. "I know your carving skills are great. Can you help me make the pumpkin lantern for Halloween this year?" Pumpkin lantern? Moon, who had never experienced Halloween, had no idea of the importance of pumpkin lanterns to this festival. Of course, this is the highlight of Halloween, and everyone will look forward to it. Halloween is a month later, and Moon is now at the last minute in making a wand. If you add the time he spent in the cypress forest, he will have 2 months to make a wand. It wouldn't take a few days to help carve pumpkin lanterns. Of course, it's also possible that by then, he has already made a real wand in Xilin. "Okay, I'll come find you then," Moon readily agreed, and then returned to the castle with a basket of snacks prepared by Hagrid for Bengbeng. After the potion class on Friday, Moon finally perfectly embedded a unicorn tail hair in ordinary wood. After using plant glue to completely stick the 2 halves of the stick together, there was no gap on the entire stick. At this point, Moon has completed all the previous experimental steps. Next, he will practice on the 3 big trees. The 3 big trees outside the greenhouse seem to know their fate. They have gradually stopped growing this week. Moon reached out to the vines that covered the greenhouse glass without any mercy. The 2 meters of magical wood should be enough for him to practice about 7 times. The holly tree next to it is a branch that has magical properties. The usable range is about 1 meter, which means 3 opportunities to practice. As for the last willow tree, it is also 3 times. But that belongs to the final decisive round. On Friday night, Moon polished all the magical wood into the prototype of the wand. Then he locked himself in the greenhouse all day Saturday. It was quiet here, perfect for him to create with peace of mind. First, the grapevine. Split, failed. Split, failed. Split, failed. Moon found that the wood with magical properties had finer textures, and each of their textures seemed to be full of magical energy. When the blade splits the texture, it will inevitably disturb the energy inside, and then disturb the force of the knife. For a whole morning, Moon destroyed 5 grapevines and 2 holly branches. After lunch at noon, Moon chose to go back to the dormitory for a nap to give his brain a full rest. When he came to the greenhouse again, Bengbeng followed him. Moon successfully split the 8th willow wood. But he failed again when digging out the groove for the wand core. Bengbeng's arrival seemed to dispel bad luck. The 9th grapevine, the 10th holly branch, and the 11th willow branch were all perfectly split. Now all that's left is to put the unicorn tail hair in. Why is this happening? The difficulty of inlaying unicorn tail hair is not high, but Moon's grapevines and holly branches spontaneously combusted when he was inlaying them. This made Moon feel bitter that he was about to see the end, but was tripped again. There are 2 last chances. Moon took out the wand he bought from Ollivander and observed it carefully. As he observed the wand, He couldn't help but recall the scene when he bought the wand. Remember, the wand chooses the wizard. After this mindless sentence jumped into Moon's mind, it could never be driven away. Thinking of this sentence in his mind, Moon began to inlay the wand core in the willow wood. When the long gap was closed, Moon came out of his dazed state. I ask all the little wizards to read it, give monthly tickets, and recommend tickets. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 42 The First Wand. 1991, Saturday evening. In Greenhouse number 1 behind Hogwarts Castle, a wand with the smell of green wood was born. Shaft, willow. Core, unicorn tail hair. Length, 11 3/4 inches. The expected joy and satisfaction did not come on time. Moon was now only worried. He could not even enter the trance state when he just made the wand. It was a wonderful state. Moon was immersed in it, and there was only one thing in his mind, the wand. Moon even felt that in this state, all his movements slowed down, which gave him enough time to operate each step. But Moon knew that in reality, his movements did not slow down. This is really a strange and beautiful magic. Moon sighed and carefully observed the wand in his hand. The new wand was shorter than the one he bought from Ollivander, and the whole thing had a distinct green moisture. It seems to be fine now, but we still need to experiment. Putting the wand into the wizard robe, Moon picked up Bengbeng and walked out of the castle. Now he had to carry out the last step of wand making, verification. When buying the wand at Ollivander's, Moon clearly remembered the scene of testing the wand. At that time, he just waved the wand casually, and all the wand boxes in Ollivander's store jumped up. Such a scene must not happen in the greenhouse, otherwise Moon would face more than just being deducted points. The scenery outside the school in the evening was very beautiful. Moon ran into 3 pairs of senior students along the way. It was not until he followed Bengbeng's instructions and came to the edge of the Black Lake that no one else disturbed him. Chiji, so you are catching fish here? Moon looked around and found that this was indeed a blind spot. Only the tall buildings of the castle in the distance could see this place. After confirming that there would be no obstacles, Moon asked Bengbeng to run to the bushes in the distance. Moon was not sure about the opening test of the new wand. For safety reasons, he could only let Bengbeng hide far away. Holding the new wand that still smelled wet, Moon waved it gently. Up, there was no reaction around. Try again. Still no reaction. Alice, it still doesn't work. Moon turned around with some disappointment. Just when he was about to call Bengbeng out to make the next one together, the little guy ran out from the bushes with a chirp. Its little paws were always pointing behind Moon. At this time, Moon also found something unusual. He heard the sound of waves hitting the shore behind him. Wow! Moon turned his head suddenly and saw that the Black Lake, which was calm just now, was actually rippling. Did it work? Moon still couldn't believe it. He picked up the wand again and cast transfiguration on the dead branches scattered on the ground. A long silver needle appeared. It really works. Moon no longer remembered how he got back to the castle that night. He only remembered that the fluorescent flashes emitted by the new wand illuminated the road in the dark. But the opening test of the new wand was not over yet. Not long after Moon left the Black Lake, a huge black shadow emerged from the water. A giant squid searched for a long time where Moon had just stood, and it returned to the bottom of the lake reluctantly until the special magic power just dissipated. Not only the squid was disturbed, but the leader of the mermaid tribe also protested to the school that night. But Moon didn't know all this. After testing the wand, he went directly to the auditorium. At this time, some young wizards who had eaten late were still eating, and Moon joined them. After finishing a portion of jam pudding, Moon was about to put down the tableware, but his hand stopped in midair. From the reflection of the silver spoon, Moon found that his wizard bar was actually more than half a grid. He brought the spoon closer, confirmed it carefully, and then picked up the golden plate to examine it. Only then did Moon dare to confirm that his wizard bar was indeed more than half a grid. Looking back at Malfoy on the Slytherin table, Moon found that his wizard bar was as long as his. That is to say, 1 month after he entered school, his magic power caught up with the second echelon of freshmen. What are you looking at, poor boy? Malfoy's voice came, interrupting Moon's thoughts. Nothing, good night. Moon was not interested in arguing with anyone today, because he didn't want to ruin the great happiness he had now. Is he sick? Malfoy was also a little overwhelmed by Moon's answer. Moon did nothing else all day on Sunday. He quietly finished all the transfiguration and potions homework in the library. The huge joy did not overwhelm Moon's reason. He knew that he had to adjust his state to the best next. Only in this way could he ensure that he could complete a wand-making in Xilin. At dinner, Moon gave the remaining magical wood to Cedric. After Moon left for a long time, Cedric recovered from his astonishment. Impossible, in fact, Cedric had already prepared for not receiving wood before Christmas. Because he never thought that first-year freshmen could make wands. But now he was holding a piece of intact willow in his hand, which could only mean that Moon succeeded. Cedric, who returned to the Hufflepuff common room, did not sleep well all night, and he decided to ask Moon for clarification tomorrow. However, Moon could only give the answer that Cedric wanted 7 days later. That night, Moon returned to Xilin's wooden house, and only went to sleep peacefully after confirming that the branch given by the big willow tree was still there. In the next 2 days, while waiting for Brad's news, Moon polished out the prototypes of 3 wands. The proportions were completely based on the shape of the wand he bought from Ollivander. Just when he was about to start cutting on the 3rd day, Brad came with a map. This map is really hard to find. I searched the old house all over, and finally found a booklet in the cellar with a map inside, Brad said, sitting down on Moon's small bed, and picked up a sweet potato roasted on the fire. This is too abstract. After opening the map, Moon's happy expression disappeared. Because he found that this map was not only very tattered, but also had special contents. The rivers and mountains drawn on it were easy to recognize, but what were the dense black dots? There were also, Y3. These strange symbols were everywhere on the map. This is the graffiti map that my grandfather drew casually. Graffiti? That's right. Moon remembered that the last time he saw this style of work was in his cousin Sophia's textbook. But I can't understand it at all. Moon threw the map back to Brad. The young horseman obviously valued the map very much. Seeing the paper flying over, he quickly let go of the roasted sweet potato in his hand and took the map steadily in his hand. Be careful. This is the secret of our Wrangler family. Of course, outsiders can't understand it. Although he has become a horse-raising servant in the monastery, Brad is obviously very yearning for his family's past. Brad, I really need to know where the mysterious herd of wild horses is. I know. Then why don't you give me this thing? But didn't I come here in person? Please read it, vote for it, and recommend it to me. Chapter 43 Abnormal Wild Horses. Brad's decision was totally unexpected to Moon. In his previous understanding, Brad worked for the church every day. Herding horses, mowing grass, cleaning stables, bathing horses. These jobs occupied Brad's time every day, and he even had to squeeze out time to rest. In the past, when the two of them met, they could only talk when Brad drove the horses to the grasslands near the farm to graze. Moon had teased him before, unless the Mad King came back again, the monastery would never give servants a holiday. You are not sure this time. Brad folded the map carefully, and then put it in the lining pocket on his chest before looking at Moon again. Brother Layton said that there will be distinguished guests in the monastery in the next 2 days. In order not to disturb the guests' rest, all the servants were given a holiday. All servants. Who will greet the guests? Who knows? It may be the monks themselves. After saying this, Brad's mouth corners could not stop rising. Well, I really hope this guest will never leave, Moon teased, then looked at Brad seriously. Are you sure you want to go with me? There are troops stationed there now, of course. Brad patted his hands after eating the roasted sweet potatoes, and then stood up. I have ridden horses there before, and I know a lot of forks in the road. As long as we bypass the military station, it will be fine. Besides, you can't understand this map. Brad's reason was very sufficient, which made Moon completely unable to refuse. In the end, he could only find Neil to borrow 2 horses from the farm, on the grounds that he wanted to go to Brad's hometown. After repeatedly promising to return as soon as possible, the two embarked on the journey north. It takes at least 10 days to walk from Xilin to the foot of Snow Eagle Mountain, which is an unsafe time period for Moon. If he does not return on time, he can only go to Hogwarts in the wild. This is something Moon does not want to try yet. But with horses as a means of transportation, the time is shortened a lot. What does this symbol represent? During the first night's rest, Moon pointed to the symbol on the map and asked Brad curiously. This should represent the discovery of something wonderful, that is, The mysterious herd of horses you are looking for. If you can use the word should, maybe I can trust you more." Listening to Brad's tone, Moon felt that this trip was full of uncertainty. "Don't say that, you have heard the story of our family. When you can see a place with music, it means that we have discovered the ultimate secret." The ultimate secret, Brad said, was the channel through which their family could help others match horses in the past. However, can music be seen? Moon asked in his heart and sat closer to the fire. The place where they rested was a wooden house where horse herders often stayed overnight in the past. Because it was not far from the main road, it was still safe. There was a crackling sound of firewood in the fire, and Moon picked up a knife and began to cut the willow branches attentively. Brad on the side saw this and stopped making noises to disturb them, but studied the map carefully. Perhaps because all the bad luck had been used up some time ago, Moon completed the perfect division of the 2 willow branches in his hand. On the second day of departure, they could already see the towering Snow Eagle Mountain from afar. This mountain is also the dividing line between the Gracia Federation and the Melanie Empire. After approaching the foot of the mountain, Brad led the way far away from the main road. Further ahead is the military area, and they must take a detour at this time. However, some things cannot be avoided just by wanting to avoid them. On the afternoon of the second day, Moon and Brad still found traces of the army. This is a place marked as Y on the map. Moon and Brad saw a group of soldiers on horseback chasing a herd of reindeer above the valley in the distance. Look, the map is marked correctly. This is where the reindeer live. Brad lay on the ground, looking very happy. He proved that there was nothing wrong with his family's map. Moon originally questioned the use of a Y to represent a herd of reindeer, even though Brad kept explaining that animals rarely leave the gathering place on their own initiative. Okay, you're right, but we have to leave now. Moon found that this location was too close to the hunting army below, and they had to take a detour again. When it was getting close to dusk, Moon and Brad finally found a group of wild horses drinking water by a stream. No, this should not represent them. Brad stood on the other side of the river, carefully recalling the content of the family legend, and looked at the dozen wild horses on the other side from time to time. Although Moon didn't know how Brad understood the map, he was sure that the horses on the other side were not the magical animals he was looking for. Recalling the records about unicorns seen in the Hogwarts library, Moon suggested that the two continue to search up along the stream. As the two continued to move forward, the plants on both sides of the stream slowly changed from grassland to dense forests, and the amount of water gradually decreased. When the two stopped to rest, the group of wild horses that had finished drinking water downstream had caught up. However, the herd of horses did not stop, but continued to move forward in the direction of the stream. They are not right. Brad blew out the fire in his hand, his eyes fixed on the horses moving away. What's wrong? They shouldn't come to the forest. There is no food here, and it is not open enough. This will restrict their movements and they will be easily eaten. After hearing Brad's explanation, Moon also looked at the horses carefully. There are 2 ponies in this tribe who were born not long ago. They often trip over tree roots and stones when walking in the woods. Let's go and see. Animals in the wild are smarter than humans. This is the knowledge that Xilin taught Moon. The horses can make such abnormal behaviors, which means that there is not only no danger in the woods, but also benefits. After putting on the packs again, the two led the horses to catch up with the horses. This time they did not go too far. After arriving at a small meadow in the forest, the horses stopped moving forward. There are dense trees on 3 sides and a mountain with a small slope on one side. The stream not far away originates from the spring on that mountain. There doesn't seem to be anything special here except the source of the stream. Moon came to this conclusion after observing the area. No, it's too clean here. Brad sniffed lightly and frowned unconsciously. After Brad said this, Moon also found something unusual. This small grassland is not big, but there are more than a dozen horses living here. However, there is no smell of horse manure on the grassland, and you can even smell a faint scent of grass. Look, these horses are actually lying down to rest. Moon had heard Brad say before that wild horses usually stand when they rest. Only in this way can they react quickly when they encounter danger. But the horses here are all lying on the grass, and even 2 ponies are chasing and playing with each other here. As more and more questions came up, Moon felt that the answer was approaching him. Isn't it true that magical animals cannot be explained by common sense? Just as Moon and Brad were observing the horses, a clear and pleasant neigh came from behind the opposite mountain. Chapter 44. There really is a secret. Sometimes the ears discover secrets before the eyes, just like now. When the clear and pleasant cry fell, a pure white divine horse appeared at the highest point of the opposite hillside. Especially under the moonlight, the white horse seemed to be flowing with holy light. Brad was very excited. He verified the family's secret and knew the answer to the. In his opinion, this was the glory of the family. However, Moon was only happy for a moment and fell into thinking. This white horse that appeared at the end must be a magical animal, but Moon was too familiar with its appearance. The white horse had a long golden horn with threads on its head, and its body was very clean and spotless. Isn't this a unicorn? Ever since he encountered the big snake and the two magical plants in the forest farm, Moon suspected that the world he was born in must have some connection with the world where Hogwarts was. Now he is more sure of this. Moon was still thinking, but Brad pulled his sleeve hard. Let's go. Let's get out of here first. What's wrong? Moon looked at Brad, who was putting away the map in confusion. I know what the last two symbols on the map mean, Brad said and quietly retreated. Moon followed slowly, but he still looked at the white horse on the hill with some reluctance. This was a magical animal similar to a unicorn that he had finally found, and he didn't want to let it go so easily. Seeing that Moon was still hesitating, Brad pulled him again. Let's go quickly. Those two symbols mean that its horns can kill lions. Moon also remembered the description of the end point on the map very clearly. 3. Now it is known that the symbol represents the neighing of the white horse. The behind it must be the long golden horn on its head. But 3 actually represents a lion, which is a bit too abstract. Although he couldn't help complaining in his heart, Moon still followed Brad and slowly retreated. But when he just took the reins of the horse, a dazzling white light suddenly appeared in front of him. Whoosh! A white beam of light with sound blocked Moon and Brad. What should we do? Brad asked in a very small voice. Don't move. Moon looked at the golden horn flashing with cold light, and began to try to recall the relevant knowledge he had seen in the Hogwarts library. Unicorn, snow white fur, long horn, fast running, more willing to approach witches, and cursed for killing. After going through the knowledge points in his mind, Moon did not find a record of a unicorn killing a lion, but he also did not find a record of how to escape. The golden horn was still slowly approaching, and Moon could feel the horse behind him breathing louder. 2 meters, 1 meter. Then it passed by. When the golden horn passed by, Moon looked at the very sharp top of the horn. He had no doubt that this horn could completely string him up. But the white horse seemed unwilling to approach men, which made Moon feel relieved. Swish! Just when Moon was glad that he would have one less hole, there was a sound of cloth being torn behind him. Then something fell to the ground. Moon and Brad looked back together. They saw that the white horse had used its sharp horns to cut open the cloth bag on Moon's saddle. Inside was a large willow branch that Moon had brought out, and a half-finished magic wand. When Moon was hesitating whether to snatch the willow branch from the sharp golden horn, the white horse had already stretched out its tongue and started to enjoy the delicious food. It ate the bark that Moon had cut from the willow branch. The large willow tree was very magical. The magical fluorescence not only penetrated into the trunk, but also into the bark. Although Moon didn't know what the bark was used for, he still kept it. There was not much bark, and the white horse only stretched out its tongue once and rolled it all away accurately. But it didn't seem to be satisfied, and looked at another unpeeled willow branch. Do you need help? As soon as Moon finished speaking, the white horse's eyes widened instantly, revealing a puzzled look. Greek letter sigma. Oh, I have no ill intentions, I can just help you peel off the bark. As if he understood what Moon said, the white horse nodded slightly and took 2 steps back. Moon had actually discovered that the white horse had a serious obsession with cleanliness. Every place where it walked was covered with leaves. Even the willow bark that it had just eaten was gently rolled up with its tongue. As for the willow bark that fell on the mud, it didn't even look at it. After getting permission, Moon hurriedly picked up the willow branch and washed it in the stream to ensure that there was no dust on it. Then he took out a knife and started to make dinner for the white horse. The first willow bark was peeled off, and Moon rolled it up and placed it on a clean leaf. The white horse sniffed it gently and rolled it into its mouth. The second one, the same. The third one, when the willow bark just fell off the willow branch, the white horse's tongue was already below to pick it up. After a full 6, Moon's fear of the white horse gradually decreased. Now the sharp golden horn is against his chest. As long as the other party wants. The other party definitely doesn't want it. Because after eating, the white horse consciously took 3 steps back, and then tilted his head to look at Moon. "I came here just to get a piece of your tail hair to make the core of the staff," Moon said, picking up the two halves of the willow branch on the ground, and a very thin gap had been dug out inside. "This is the place to place the core material of the staff." The white horse should have understood what Moon said. It first sniffed the two halves of the willow branch in Moon's hand, and then slowly walked towards the grassland where the horses were. Moon subconsciously followed him, and Brad, who had been reminding him, had to follow him. "You came here just to get its hair?" Brad asked softly after catching up. "That's right," the white horse returned to the grassland like a king, and all the wild horses knelt on the ground, lowering their heads one by one. "Isn't this white horse the secret of your family?" "Of course not. The wild horses that can breed foals are these wild horses. They must have stayed with this white horse for a long time and have undergone some changes," Moon was whispering to Brad, but the white horse suddenly neighed, and then all the wild horses came to surround the two. "What are they doing?" Moon was shocked by this scene. "Are they going to imprison us?" Brad, who claimed to have the most knowledge about horses, was also panicked. Now the two were in the white horse's territory, and the map that helped them find this place also showed the danger of the white horse. This made the two dare not drive away the wild horses that surrounded them. Fortunately, the wild horses finally stopped 2 steps away, which made Moon and Brad feel a little relieved. After watching the horses execute the order, the white horse showed a satisfied expression, and then ran quickly up the hillside. Moon saw the white horse gradually running away through the gaps between the wild horses, and all he could do now was to wait quietly. Time passed little by little, and the night gradually dissipated. Just when Moon thought that he would return empty-handed, the figure of the white horse appeared again. But this time the white horse seemed to have something in its mouth. Chapter 45, Unexpected Interception. When the magical white horse returned, the wild horses automatically made way for it. Then Moon was given a straight thing that was definitely not tail hair. After putting the long thorn-like object in Moon's hand, the white horse shook its head and neighed. "You mean, this is the horn on your father's head?" Moon held the thorn in both hands and looked at the other party at a loss. The white horse nodded, and then pointed the long golden horn on its head at the willow wood in Moon's pocket. "You mean this can replace the tail hair?" Moon only understood what the other party meant at this time. Seeing the white horse nod in response, Moon became a little confused. Does it know how to make a magic wand? Shaking off the absurd thoughts that flashed through his mind, Moon concentrated on checking the thing in his hand. This is a thorn that has been stored for a long time, covered with a layer of dark golden mottled gray matter. After tapping it gently, the gray matter began to slowly fall off, and a silver filament slightly thicker than the unicorn's tail hair gradually appeared inside. Puff gently blowing away the dark golden powder remaining on the filament, a dazzling silver light flashed on the filament. When the white horse saw this scene, 2 crystal tears flowed from his eyes. This is definitely a very rare magic material. Moon, who has read magic wand making and maintenance, knows very well that there are very few items like this that show magical properties at the material stage. When unicorn tail hair, dragon heartstrings, and Vela hair are just materials, no magical properties can be found at all. Only when they are embedded in a magic wand can they be stimulated to have magical properties. The only one recorded in magic wand making and maintenance that has extraordinary magical properties at the material stage is the phoenix feather. The feather of this divine bird can not only be used to make magic wands, but it is also a talisman in itself. The silver thread is now quietly floating on Moon's hands, surrounded by a little light. Moon is very aware of the preciousness of this gift, and he nodded slightly to express his gratitude. The wild horses next to him also lowered their heads at this time, as if they were missing their former guardians. "I will use it well, please rest assured. I told you long ago that this map will never be wrong." The sun had risen high, and Moon and the others left the grassland where the wild horses were. Brad was very proud at this time, patting his chest and showing off the former glory of his family. "I knew we should have got 2 mares earlier. I found that there are several good stallions in the wild horses." Moon now completely believed in the foster family's ability to raise horses, even including the graffiti-like abstract map. But now his mind is not on raising horses. He is carrying all the wand materials on his back. As long as he returns to the farm cabin tomorrow, Moon will have enough time to make a wand. And it will be a completely different wand. "You said that one is called a unicorn, right? Can it also be matched?" Moon's surprised look made Brad not say the rest of the words. "If you don't mind having a few more holes on your body, I fully support you to give it a try," Don't say that. I found that you seem to be able to communicate with it, otherwise I will lead the most beautiful mare next time. No, I refuse. Moon rode his horse faster. Don't be like this. Moon, it must eat it, otherwise how did it give birth? On the way back, the two teenagers were happy because they got what they wanted. However, this good mood did not last long. In the evening of that day, as soon as they crossed a stream, they saw from a distance that the hut where the Wrangler rested had been burned down. This was originally where they planned to spend the night. After discovering this scene, Moon handed the horse to Brad and climbed up the opposite hillside. From here, you can just see the main road not far away. There were suddenly many patrolling soldiers on the road, and many people on the road were stopped and taken to the military camp not far away. After telling Brad about the situation, the two decided to take a detour to the cave reserved by the Wrangler to spend the night. Brad waited until it was getting dark outside before he lit a bonfire in the cave. The sudden change made both of them lose the desire to talk. The army that was supposed to stay at the foot of Snow Eagle Mountain actually came to Xilin, and just happened to intercept them on their way home. This was something they hadn't considered before they came out. This is already the hinterland of Lioyan City, shouldn't the army come here? Brad threw a piece of firewood into the fire and muttered. The boundary of the confrontation between the Gracia Federation and the Melanie Empire is the Black Soil City north of the Black Iron Mountain. It takes at least 20 days to cross the Snow Eagle Mountain from there. The herd of wild horses that Moon and his team are looking for this time is at the southernmost part of the Snow Eagle Mountain, which is at least 1 month away from the front line. Moreover, the war is still in the preparation stage, and the armies of the two countries have not yet completed their assembly. This is why Moon and his team dared to come to find the herd of wild horses. But now the army has begun to block the road inside Lioyan City, which is already a state of martial law. They don't seem to be fighting, but looking for people. Moon took off the package on his body and answered casually. Looking for someone? We are almost in Xilin. Besides, looking for someone is not the job of the army. Xilin is located at the southernmost tip of Lioyan City and is also a prosperous port. Even during the Federation Sovereignty War 10 years ago, Xilin had never been under military control. Moon didn't know how to answer this question. His understanding of war might not be as familiar as Brad, who was born as a horse breeder. However, being unfamiliar with war does not mean that you are not sensitive to danger. Emergencies often represent unknowns and risks. In order to deal with possible changes, Moon can only choose to make a want at this time. Taking out the toolbox, Moon started to work under the light of the fire. Brad, who saw this scene, also shut up. In his opinion, it doesn't matter who the army is looking for. Anyway, he ran around the area when he was releasing the horses. If the army is still blocking the road tomorrow, he will lead Moon to take a detour and return to Xilin. Moon's wand making has also reached the last step, in laying the wand core. It's just that the wand core he received now is a bit thicker, so he must adjust the size of the wand core groove. This was not a difficult task for Moon, who had experimented hundreds of times. When Brad leaned against the wall and prepared to go to sleep, Moon had completed the last step. The core of the wand was embedded in the groove of the willow branch without any sense of incongruity. When Moon was about to glue the magic wand, something strange happened. The green fluorescence that had already penetrated into the tree trunk began to slowly precipitate outward, and a green fluorescence slowly appeared at the originally divided place. Then the magic wand healed miraculously, and the original divided place could not be seen at all. Fortunately, ordinary people cannot see the magical fluorescence, and Brad next to him was about to fall asleep at this time. When Moon was about to get up and go outside the cave to test the opening of the wand, a hoarse voice of a stranger suddenly came from outside the cave. I'm so glad that there really is someone here, please read it, and also give me monthly tickets and recommendation tickets. Chapter 46, The Power of the Open Staff. The man who walked into the cave was wearing a black leather jacket, with a sharp sword tucked behind his arm, and blood could still be seen dripping down from it. Moon glanced at the other person's hand holding the sword, and hurriedly pulled Brad back to the side of the cave wall. I was just passing by and saw the fire here, so, cough cough. The man in black was injured, but he was still approaching step by step. Brad felt Moon's uneasiness from his painful arm. This reminded him of the first time he fought with Moon, when he lay in bed for a month. Moon's right hand tightly grasped the magic wand, and Brad also understood and pulled out the rusty saber he had inherited from his family. Cough, you have a night owl in your hand. Moon said this as if he had exhausted all his strength. Night owl, Yes, why, do you know it? The man in black said and raised his right hand holding the sword. I saw that the mark on the back of his hand, which was originally as black as iron, was stained with blood, which made the fierce night owl tattoo more weird. Yes, my uncle has fought with you, Moon answered with all his strength. Oh, so you are the child of an old friend, the man in black said, no longer hiding his true intention, and pointed the long sword in his hand at Moon. Brad also raised his family saber at this time, but his hand holding the saber was shaking all the time. Moon could understand Brad's feelings very well, because he used to tell Brad the name Night Owl as a horror story. The sharpest blood blade in the hands of the Mad King, the all-pervasive hidden arrows, the bloodthirsty fangs of the Empire, and the enemy that the Federal Army could not defeat. These are the most real names for Night Owl. But what Moon remembered most clearly was another sentence said by Uncle Neil. Run. Don't look back. This was the last sentence that Neil's brother and father, whom Moon had never met, said to Neil. This sentence was also the sentence that Neil repeated most when he was drunk, and it was also the most effective sentence for Moon to escape from the nightmare. Now the nightmare has become reality, and Moon has reached the time when he must run away, but the cave entrance is behind the other party. Actually, I really like children who are hurting, especially those who hold toy knives and small wooden sticks but cannot speak. The black-clothed man's tone was very contemptuous. However, when he took another step forward, Moon nervously waved a small wooden stick at him. How? What? Bang! Wait, boom! The small wooden stick in the black-clothed man's mouth just shook, and a person lay on the cold ground. Boom boom, the ground shook slightly, and then 2 stones on the top of the cave fell down. What happened? Why did he jump onto the cave, and then fall down? Brad was even more terrified now. He bit his tongue twice before he finished a sentence. Moon also swallowed hard. This was his 3rd time to test the wand, and the first time to test it on a person. However, the effect was surprisingly good. See how he is? Moon did not answer Brad's words, but kept holding the magic wand. He knew very well how powerful the Night Owl was. Even if the opponent was a wounded Night Owl, Moon kept reciting the fire spell in his heart over and over again. This is one of the few spells that can hurt people that he has mastered. Moon knew that the power of this spell was not great. So he kept the tip of his stick pointed at the black-clad man's hair. This was also the only way he could think of to disturb the awakened Night Owl, and then the 2 of them could take the opportunity to escape. Brad saw that the small wooden stick in Moon's hand was more useful than his saber, so he boldly reached out to the black-clad man. He must have fainted. Brad touched the black-clad man's neck and turned his head to look at Moon. Let's go, let's leave quickly. The road at night was very difficult to walk, especially a small road that the Wranglers had abandoned for many years. Even though Brad was very familiar with the direction, the 2 of them stumbled all the way. Because he was afraid of being discovered, Moon did not use the spell to illuminate, and even if he used luminescent flash, he could not last too long. Fortunately, the 2 horses were much stronger than people, and they became the best guides in the dark. It was not until the blue-red light spots appeared on the horizon that Moon and Brad saw the low walls of Xilin. Last night, the cave where the herders rested was actually very lively. Not long after Moon and the other 2 left, the patrolling soldiers found this place and saw the Night Owl lying on the ground. However, they did not wake him up until the military doctor arrived and confirmed that the Night Owl had broken his spine. Huh? Are you saying that the Night Owl, who killed 100 of my troops, broke his spine in this cramped, small cave full of horse manure? Lieutenant Colonel Langdon Bruce had never been as angry as today. Even though his accompanying military doctor repeatedly told him to rest in peace, he couldn't help but bring all the guards to personally check on the enemy who had injured him. Langdon was appointed as the captain of the 5th Battalion of the 3rd Brigade, the 1st Infantry Regiment, and the subordinate Legion of Liuan City 3 days ago. He had not yet familiarized himself with the 500-man battalion, but now he had lost 1/5 of them. Even he himself was stabbed in the lower abdomen by the opponent's long sword. And this situation was caused by only one of the enemies, Night Owl. Seeing that the military doctor stopped talking, Langdon asked the other party again. Are you sure this beast has broken his spine? Report to the commander. It is certain. The fracture is just below the neck, very obvious, and can be easily pressed with a hand. The military doctor tried to answer quickly and concisely. Okay, then can he wake up? Langdon asked the military doctor, trying to suppress his anger. Yes, but after waking up, he will lose all sensation below the neck. That's good. I just need his head to be clear. Langdon said and kicked the black-clothed man lying on the ground fiercely. "Come here, find the most proficient executioner. I want to know all the information in this mixed feathered bird's mouth." Instead of finding someone who is proficient in interrogation, he asked the most proficient executioner to interrogate. This is Langdon's attitude. While interrogating the prisoners, the news of the huge casualties of the soldiers soon reached the top of the army. Along with it came another secret message. The Mad King's sharpest, Night Owl guard, broke his spine in a narrow cave. Moon, who returned to Xilin, went straight to Neil and explained to him in detail what happened last night. Neil knew that Moon would never joke about the name of Night Owl. So at noon that day, he summoned all the trustworthy veterans nearby to his home. Night Owl has come to Xilin? The guards of Leoyan City are just decorations, so what if there are guards? They are Night Owl. Don't say that, Hawk. The most important thing for us now is to stock up some food. It seems that the war will come faster than expected. That's right, let's go buy it separately, so that we can distract our attention. The attitude towards the enemy can prove whether a person has truly experienced war. The recruits may be afraid and hesitant at this time, or they may be excited. But the veterans first think of how to survive, and then how to kill the enemy. Now the veterans must not only consider how to survive themselves, but also how to keep their families alive. Please read Monthly Votes and Recommendation Votes. Chapter 47 Want Added Value. The adults in the house were still arguing, while Moon and Brad outside were listening quietly. Since seeing the Night Owl knocked unconscious in the cave last night, Brad had figured out most of the things. "You are a spellcaster, right? The Night Owl was defeated by your magic yesterday, right?" Brad had completely forgotten the horror of the Night Owl, and now he only cared about the magical stick in Moon's hand. "To be precise, I am a magician. Of course you can also say I am a spellcaster." Moon was not admitted to the Federal Military Academy, so he did not think he was an orthodox spellcaster. However, people in the Federation called magicians spellcasters, which made it difficult for him to clearly define his identity. "Moon, I never thought I would have a spellcaster friend." "You are not." Brad's voice was still ringing in his ears, but Moon did not hear a word. Moon kept recalling the process of telling Neil the whole thing just now. He had never seen such a complicated look in Neil's eyes. Fear, hesitation, determination. It seemed that the name Night Owl should not appear in the conversation of the Scarlett family. It could only be mentioned slightly after drinking. The voices in the room soon ended, and everyone began to prepare supplies according to the method just discussed. "Brad, you go back first. Remember to keep yesterday's events confidential." Hearing Neil's order, Brad nodded heavily. He knew very well the value of a night owl, which was definitely not something a small horse-raising servant could know. After Brad left, Moon was called into the room where the meeting had just taken place. The smell of tobacco had not yet dissipated, and the doors and windows were still closed. "Huh?" Neil exhaled a long puff of smoke and turned to look at Moon. "Moon, I need to know everything." This was the first time Neil talked to Moon in an equal tone. Even if Moon still wanted to continue to conceal it, he had to reveal all the secrets when looking at those eyes. "It happened on the night of my birthday. The Scarlet Moon appeared that day, and then I arrived. Well, it's really unbelievable." Neil exhaled another puff of white smoke, and his breathing gradually returned to normal. What Moon said just now made his hand holding the pipe very uncontrollable, and he failed to put the pipe into his mouth accurately several times. "But although things are bizarre, I believe you. No one can understand the weight of this sentence better than Moon now." For this sentence, even if Moon stayed alone in a strange world for half a year, even if he needed to earn money alone or he would starve, even if he needed to live in a damp and cold bridge hole, all these things, after Neil said he believed, were no longer important. "Okay, kid, put away your tears, and besides, you should know what Night Owl represents." Neil exhaled another heavy puff of smoke. "I know you must have had a hard time these years, but I hope you can continue to hide your secrets." Neil's tone changed so quickly that Moon was a little overwhelmed. He just revealed so many secrets just to prove that he was an adult and could help deal with some things. But, no buts, you have to remember, Moon. No matter what you've been through, you're still just an 11-year-old kid, and these things have nothing to do with you. Dong dong dong. Neil knocked his pipe on the corner of the table, his expression serious and earnest. "In addition, I will notify Xilin to let him live in my house for a while until we figure out what the Night Owl is all about." Neil left after he finished speaking, leaving Moon alone in the smoky house. Moon found that he had misunderstood. secrets, abilities, and even magic. These cannot make an adult treat an 11-year-old child as an adult. Neil's attitude made Moon incomprehensible, but this incomprehension was soon replaced by another thing. Moon discovered something worth celebrating. The new wand is indeed different. Just now in the water tank in the kitchen, Moon, holding the wand, saw that the wizard bar above his head had changed significantly again. In fact, when the first wand was made at Hogwarts, Moon's wizard bar had already exceeded half a grid. Now when he holds the wand in his hand, the wizard bar has increased to 3/4 of a grid. This is almost catching up with the length of Hermione's wizard bar. However, when he put down the wand, the wizard bar was just over half the length. This difference can only mean that the wand temporarily improved Moon's magic power. This made Moon have a deeper understanding of the new wand in his hand. The wand body is made of a magical big willow tree that has lived for who knows how many years, and the core material in the golden horn of a unicorn is the wand core. The wand made in this way, even if it is placed in Hogwarts, will definitely exceed the cognition of many people. Of course, holding the wand in his hand now also gave Moon a greater sense of security. Especially in the future, Xilin may be more turbulent. That night, all the purchased materials in the alley were gathered together. The veterans used this most extreme way to distribute survival resources. Even if many people disagreed, they could not resist the violent execution of 33 veterans. Moon didn't care about these. The only thing he was worried about now was that someone would discover the changes tonight. He had to leave here for 3 minutes to go to Hogwarts. But Neil had already made preparations. He asked Moon to sleep in the same room with him, so that no matter what happened at night, no one would disturb him. That night, Moon returned to Hogwarts again. Everyone in the dormitory was sleeping peacefully, and the sound of their breathing was very even. This peaceful environment made Moon unable to adapt all of a sudden. Until the sun rose in the morning, Moon, who had not closed his eyes all night, got up early as usual. The sanitation of the common room should have just been cleaned, and there was still dust floating in the air after sweeping the floor. Moon sat down again in the original position where he made the wand. Now that the wand had just been made, Moon had already found the next thing to do. Improving the ability to survive in the war is the most simple truth told to Moon by a group of veterans. In order to achieve this goal, Moon must improve his strength. And the easiest way is to learn spells. So after sitting down, Moon directly sorted out all the spells he had mastered. Illumination spell, unlocking spell, softening spell, fire spell. After writing them down, Moon found that these were all auxiliary spells related to life. The illumination spell is used to see in the dark, the unlocking spell is used to solve the problem of not bringing the key, and the softening spell is used to soften hard objects. The only spell that can cause collateral damage is the fire spell. But the damage caused by the fire spell cannot achieve the effect that Moon wants. Just like this time, if Moon had not happened to cast the wand opening magic, he who only knew how to cast the fire spell would not be able to avoid the fate of being killed. After all, burning hair cannot cause much damage to the night owl. So now what Moon should do most is to learn spells that can quickly control the enemy, or enhance self-protection. I am looking for the Little Wizard's follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets. Chapter 48 New Notice from School. After deciding to learn spells, Moon's direction was clear at once. He even thought about who to find and what spells to learn. One was Hermione. Last time in the library, Moon found Hermione studying the petrification spell. Although this spell was not in the syllabus for first-year students, it was very much in line with Moon's current requirements. As for the other person, it was Ron. This little wizard, whose wizard bar was still blank, had a lot of experience in small evil spells. In the dormitory, he often heard Ron talk about the spells his two mischievous brothers used to tease others. Some of these spells also met Moon's requirements. Just after Moon had sorted out the spells to learn, his roommates appeared in the lounge one by one. Ron was not the first to come out, but after seeing the new wand Moon put on the table, he became the first to run down. Is this true? Did you really make it? This is impossible. Before Moon had time to answer the three questions, Harry, Seamus and Neville all surrounded him. Let me see, it's really new Ron, didn't you say that the professor couldn't make it either? I know you can do it, Moon. The four people surrounded Moon tightly, and everyone carefully observed the new wand. Is this the finished product? It won't be unable to cast magic, right? Ron took the wand from Neville again and asked doubtfully. You can try it. Moon's expression was very natural. Can I? I only know some minor evil spells." Ron was very surprised. After all, he was holding a new wand, not an old one that his brother had discarded, and even the core was leaking out. But when he said he wanted to try the minor evil spell, everyone avoided him. Everyone knew that this kind of minor evil spell was created to torment young wizards. "The minor evil spell is very good. I plan to learn it from you, but I have to go to class today. In order to avoid accidents, maybe you can try Lumispheric Flash." Seeing Ron's helpless eyes, Moon made his own suggestion 3 meters away. Luminescent, that's how it's pronounced, right?" Ron repeated it again worriedly. "Maybe you can pronounce it faster." Just as Moon finished speaking, a serious female voice interrupted him. "It's luminescent, Ron. This is the first spell that Professor Flitwick explains. Just by listening to the voice, you can guess who it is. Hermione, a first-year professor of Gryffindor. Since you can do it, then you try it." Hearing Hermione say this, Ron very tactfully handed over the wand. Hermione took the wand without any hesitation. She first checked it carefully, then looked up at Moon. "Are you sure this wand is qualified?" "Of course, I've tried it." In response to Hermione's rigorous attitude, Moon gave a clear answer. "Okay, luminescent." A white light appeared on the top of the wand. It actually works. The material of the new wand did not match Hermione, so the light only lasted for more than 10 seconds. But this was enough to surprise Hermione. Hermione stopped casting spells and looked at Moon curiously, not noticing that Ron had already taken the wand. Then there was another, Lumispheric Flash. Perhaps because Ron was more suited to the Willow Wand, he could maintain the illuminating spell a little longer than Hermione. "How did you do it?" Watching the boys start testing the new wands one by one, Hermione walked to Moon and asked a question in her mind. "I did it with my hands." "Didn't you see me making a wand?" Moon's answer was true, but Hermione was very uneasy. "I saw it, but it requires mastering very advanced division magic." "How could you do it with your hands?" Hermione's eyes were full of doubt. She even thought that Moon was deceiving her for a moment. Moon didn't know how to dispel Hermione's doubts. In his opinion, making a wand was just a diligent practice of magic. "What's wrong, Hermione? Is there something wrong?" Harry had just experimented with the illuminating spell and was squeezed out of the crowd. He just happened to hear Hermione's question. Making a wand is actually harder than any course in school, especially since it requires mastering advanced splitting magic, and Moon is just using his hands, which is a bit. Ron also pulled himself away from the wand at this time. He had disliked Hermione since the beginning of the school year, and now he couldn't stand Hermione's suspicious tone. "What's so difficult? Can't Moon be allowed to master it?" "Ron, you don't know the difficulty of splitting a wand. If Moon can complete this step with his hands, it means that he has surpassed many masters who are proficient in splitting spells, or he has a very high talent in this aspect." Hermione didn't hear that Ron was making things difficult for her. She was still talking about the matter. "Talent for splitting spells, right? Coincidentally, I know a related spell." Ron's words made everyone around him suspicious. Not only Moon and Hermione, but even Neville and Seamus, who were still playing with their wands, looked over curiously. "Don't look at me like that. I haven't mastered this spell yet, but I know how to use it." Then Ron told everyone about the origin of a small evil curse that was inherited from the family. As famous pranksters at Hogwarts, George and Weasley once changed an intermediate spell-splitting curse into a small trick spell. Rope-cutting curse. This spell can cut someone's belt unexpectedly, making the cursed person embarrassed in front of his classmates. This is also the only small evil spell that Ron has not mastered. Well, although it doesn't sound good, but before Hermione finished expressing her opinion, Ron had already begun to explain the spell and gestures of this spell to Moon. "The wand is slightly tilted, a light stroke, and then recite the spell, is that right?" "Yes," as long as before Ron finished speaking, the parchment in his hand had been split into two. The cut surface was unusually neat. Looking at the half piece of paper falling down, everyone froze in place. The delicious food in the cafeteria in the morning awakened the taste buds of all the little wizards, but the freshmen of Gryffindor no longer needed it. "I've said it before, unless you have a very high talent, how can you split the wand?" Now Hermione has believed that Moon can split the wand, because she still hasn't mastered the rope-cutting spell just now. Others are also discussing, but most of them are more concerned about the new wand, not Moon's super talent. Just when everyone was happily discussing, Professor McGonagall's sudden arrival attracted everyone's attention. Then, in the curious eyes of all the students, The vice president read out the new school regulations. No one can cast a powerful spell by the Black Lake. When Professor McGonagall announced this decision, her eyes were always on the students in the 6th and 7th grades. Especially those boys and girls who often stroll outside the school on weekends. As for the students in the lower grades, she has completely ignored them, not to mention the freshmen in the 1st grade. Moon vaguely guessed something when he heard this notice, but he didn't make it public. Anyway, there were no relevant regulations in the school before today. Moon felt that as long as he didn't conduct the wand opening test by the Black Lake in the future, it would be fine. Seeking follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets from the Little Wizard. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 49: The Threshold of the Herbal Club. After the herbology class on Monday afternoon, Moon was detained by Professor Sprout. It seems that I greatly underestimated your talent in plant magic. Sprout was holding the new wand made by Moon in her hand. She first observed it carefully in her hand, and then held the wand and pointed it at an orchid on the operating table. Orchid blooms. After the spell was chanted, a pure white orchid quietly bloomed. Although I don't know how to make it, it is undeniable that it is indeed a qualified wand. Sprout gave the most pertinent evaluation. The wand body comes from the magical plant stimulated by the potion, and the wand core is just the unicorn tail hair picked up from the Forbidden Forest. This has determined that the upper limit of this wand will not be very high. In comparison, the wand he used in Xilin is many levels higher. Okay, Mr. Scarlett, I think you handed in an almost perfect assignment, but I can't give you extra points this time. Sprout handed the wand back to Moon, wiped his hands on both sides of his apron, and then solemnly took out an invitation. This was an envelope made of yellow parchment, with a green stamp of an unknown plant pattern in the middle, Mr. Moon Scarlett. The blue font on the envelope seemed to have been written for a long time. In fact, I have prepared this invitation letter a long time ago, but I really didn't expect that you could complete this impossible task in such a short time, Professor. In fact, your club has been inspiring me. Moon returned the compliment to Sprout intact, and then took the envelope and opened it. Dear Mr. Moon Scarlett, in view of your excellent completion of the task, you have proved your excellent talent in herbal plants. You are now sincerely invited to join the Synopsis Club. In addition, the club holds a meeting every Monday at 7 p.m., and participation is voluntary. The address is the third small classroom on the right side of the auditorium. Pomona Sprout, how about it? Are you interested? Professor Sprout asked with a smile after Moon finished reading the letter. Of course, Moon replied solemnly, putting the letter in his pocket. Okay, believe me, kid, the answer you hand in will definitely surprise everyone tonight. Sprout patted Moon on the shoulder and went to prepare for tonight's club ceremony. After Moon left the greenhouse, he went to the library to finish today's homework, and then went to the auditorium to eat. He had to leave enough time for the club activities. However, he had just arrived at the auditorium and had not had time to eat a few bites, and Cedric came directly over. The party is at 7 o'clock in the evening. If there's nothing to do, we can actually go there first. Hearing Cedric say this, Moon knew that the secretary of the Crispilligrins Club had learned the news from Sprout. Okay, Moon swallowed the food hurriedly, wiped his mouth, and followed Cedric away. It seems that Moon got Professor Sprout's invitation as he wished. Ron looked at Moon with some envy as he left, and then stuffed a big mouthful of pudding into his mouth. Hermione, who was sitting next to him, also kept staring at the direction where Moon left. She had stopped flipping through the book, and there seemed to be thinking and an urgent desire in her eyes. I really didn't expect you to finish making the wand so quickly. When Professor Sprout asked me to tell you about the club rules just now, I almost didn't react. The club classroom is very close to the auditorium. Cedric had just finished speaking when they arrived at the door of the classroom. This is a very inconspicuous small wooden door, and next to it is the corridor leading to the Hufflepuff common room. Cedric pushed the door open and then motioned Moon to come in. Actually, I didn't expect that making a wand would be so fast. Maybe I really have a talent in this area, Moon answered, and then carefully visited this small classroom. This is almost another replica of the greenhouse, and the smell of plants and soil fills the entire classroom. The walls around are covered with unknown vines, and there are several long wooden workbenches below. Plants of various shapes were placed on each operating table, and the fragrance they exuded made Moon feel that the whole classroom was a huge forest. There was not a single chair in the whole classroom. Plants were on the walls, and the operating tables around and the table in the middle were all covered with plants. If Moon were asked to describe this place, it could only be plants, plants, and plants. There are currently 32 members in the club. If you only count the students in the school, you are exactly the 7th. After watching Moon appreciate the environment, Cedric explained the situation of the club. 7 people. Isn't it a little too few? Moon was about to look at the plants on the operating table. When he heard Cedric say this, he turned his head and looked over in confusion. Actually, it's not too few. Think about what the conditions for joining are, Cedric reminded Moon, and Moon reacted. He was able to join the club because he grew magical plants and then used the magical plants to make a magic wand. It was very difficult to accomplish this. He had 4 years of planting experience in Xilin farm to ensure the survival of the seedlings. Then, after 3 years of woodcarving experience and the flash of inspiration when making a wand, the first wand was completed. If the difficulty of joining the club is like this, then 7 people are indeed not a small number. It seems to prove the absolute authority of the club in herbal plants. Cedric led Moon to the operating table. On this table are the works of each member when they joined. Each one is a new discovery and use of herbal plants. Cedric pointed to a plant with curled leaves. This is snail grass, cultivated by Senior Bernard, and the juice produced by it was made into an excellent magical adhesive, Cedric said and picked up the transparent glass bottle next to the plant. The white label on it read Bernard adhesive. This adhesive is very sticky and lasts for a long time. It is said that the Quidditch Boutique has invited Senior Bernard to work there as long as he graduates next year. This is swallowtail flower, which was successfully cultivated by Senior Molyneux, and then a unique incense was made. At this point, Cedric suddenly leaned closer and whispered. Although the professor does not allow this kind of semi-finished incense to enter the market, Senior Molyneux has secretly tried it on several friends, and they are said to be very satisfied. This is sleepy face fungus. My father and I discovered it during a field expedition. Its spores have a very strong hypnotic effect. I joined the club because of this. Cedric was a little embarrassed when he introduced his work. Because compared to other people's plants, they already had finished products that could be used. And the work he joined was just the discovery of a magical plant that has not yet been registered. However, Moon did not notice the change in the boy's expression opposite. After listening to Cedric's talk, he really knew how high the threshold of the club was and why there were so few people. I am looking for the Little Wizards follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets. In addition, thank you Luo Fenchuksu and book friend 201911141250463324 for the reward. Chapter 50, The Reward Newt Left Behind. The workbenches around were all filled with plants planted by former club members, most of whose owners had already left the school. However, the plants here did not wither because of the departure of their owners, but grew very luxuriantly. This was obviously the result of Professor Sprout's careful care. After Cedric introduced all the plants, it was almost 7 o'clock. After a while, Professor Sprout pushed the door open, holding a flower pot in her hand, followed by 5 senior students. Okay, quiet down for a moment, students. Aren't you curious about why I brought a willow branch? Sprout asked the students behind her to disperse, and then glanced at Moon in the distance. Actually, this is the plant material of a new member. Let us welcome the first-year Gryffindor student, Mr. Moon Scarlett. What? First year? No way. The students who had just gathered around the professor to ask questions now followed Sprout's gaze and looked at the stranger behind them. Don't question his age, gentlemen and ladies, because his work is a willow wand. Wand? Professor, are you sure? A first-year student made a wand. Is he Mr. Ollivander's apprentice? Amid the doubts of the senior students, Moon slowly walked to Sprout and took out the one that still had the green and wet smell of wood. My name is Bernard Vincent, a 7th-year Hufflepuff student. Can I see your wand? Moon looked at the senior who produced the adhesive with snail grass. He looked very ordinary, but his attitude was very friendly. Of course, Moon handed over the wand. It's really a wand. The spell is also very smooth to cast. Don't you feel that its feel, center of gravity, and length make it very effortless and smooth to wield? Every member of the club got Moon's new wand, and they even cast spells with it more than a dozen times. I really didn't expect that you could make a wand at the age of 11. I was already in the 4th grade when I made the snail grass. Bernard Vincent looked at Moon with envy. Yes, I didn't expect Cedric's record to be broken in less than 3 months. The one who spoke was Senior Molyneux, who cultivated swallowtail flowers. The record she was talking about was the youngest record to join the club. Before Moon, it was Cedric's record of 13 years old. Well, since Mr. Scarlett's eligibility to join has been confirmed, everyone should not disturb him. Let Cedric take him to familiarize himself with it again, Sprout said and looked down at Moon again. Today you just need to familiarize yourself with it. If you have any questions, you can come to me. With Sprout's help, Moon quickly walked out of the crowd. It was the first time that Moon received so many compliments, which made Moon feel unreal. After Moon walked down from the podium, Sprout was surrounded by senior students again, asking various questions about herbal plant magic. Cedric led Moon to the table in the middle of the classroom. This table was not as crowded as the other workstations. There was only a pot of plants with small white flowers on it. This is the biggest prize prepared by the club this year, Moonlight Grass. Cedric kept his eyes on the small white flowers while introducing them. Moonlight Grass? What can it do? It is the main ingredient for refining Moonlight Potion, which can give wizards the ability to see at night. Cedric looked around and added, this is the prize given by Mr. Newt Scamander to the students who cultivated excellent plants this year. Newt Scamander. Moon still knew this name. Before school started, he bought a second-hand textbook with a copy of Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them. Newt Scamander was the author of this book. Is he also a member of the club? Moon asked curiously. No, although Mr. Newt once went to Hogwarts and was a Hufflepuff student, I don't know why he was expelled later. Cedric's tone was slightly disappointed. But he has always been paying attention to Hogwarts. I heard from seniors that he often comes to the club's gatherings. With Cedric's explanation, Moon had a basic understanding of the club. At the small weekly gatherings, Sprout would come to answer questions for each student. Every spring around Easter, a large gathering would be held in Hogsmeade, and old members who had left the school would also come to participate. At this gathering, the best plant works of the year would be selected and awarded. At the large gathering that had already passed this year, Nit left this Moonlight Grass as a reward for next year. Can I also participate? Moon looked at Cedric curiously. Of course, but your age is a problem. Hogwarts students are allowed to go to Hogsmeade only after they are in the 3rd year and have obtained the signed permission of their guardians. And Moon obviously does not meet this condition. But you don't have to care too much about these. After all, you will be the person who has received guidance for the longest time in the club. Hearing the envy in Cedric's tone, Moon subconsciously turned his head to look at Sprout, who was still surrounded by students. This professor, who always wore patched clothes, seemed to be able to give insights on any plant magic problem. The professor is very powerful, Cedric added, and Moon did not deny it, but he was more concerned about another question. I wonder if the professor has studied those ancient magical plants. In another world, Moon could find many plant herbs that were thousands of years old or even older. If these could be used, it would be a huge fortune, and perhaps it could also improve his magical strength. However, this work is very complicated, and it is obviously very difficult for Moon to do it alone. But if there is an experienced elder to guide, the difficulty of this matter will be reduced exponentially. Thinking of this, Moon secretly made up his mind to ask more about herbal plant magic knowledge in the club. Remember the sawdust you gave me? I have buried them all in it now. Coming to the operating table again, Cedric pointed to the flower pot of the sleepy-faced mushroom with his finger, and then looked at Moon. Do you want this mushroom to absorb the magical properties of the sawdust? Moon looked at the black soil in the flower pot, which did emit a few green spots that were not prominent. Yes, it was the professor who reminded me, and then I asked you to borrow these sawdust. Have these mushrooms changed now? Moon, who already had a wand, didn't care much about the sawdust. He was more curious about these black mushrooms. Not yet. I think they will need at least a month. I still have the growth potion. No. The sleepy fungus doesn't have the strong absorption ability of magical trees, and your potion is too expensive. I can't afford it. Hearing that Moon wanted to use the growth potion on the sleepy fungus, Cedric hurriedly stopped him. Okay. If you need it, you can tell me. I still have some potion. After Moon used the growth potion awarded by Professor Sprout on the 3 big trees, there were still 6 drops left, and then he kept it locked in the suitcase under the bed. You'd better keep it well for now. One sleepy fungus is enough for me to study for 4 years, and you'd better think about the next research direction, asking for the Little Wizard's follow-up reading, monthly tickets, and recommendation tickets. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.